Tonight's pot roast is off limits to you. Here, have this instead. But this is leftover soup and salad from 2 days ago. It might have gone bad. You can handle it, right? Don't be wasteful. Eat up. I don't want to waste good meat on you. I can eat this. What was that? Leftovers are perfect for you. Stop complaining and eat up. My mother-in-law always directs such nastiness towards me. She's so obnoxious, it just gets under my skin. My name is Mary, a 27-year-old woman juggling both work and home responsibilities. I got married only a year ago, so I don't have any kids yet. Right now, we're living with my husband's family in their house. I never wanted to live with my in-laws, but since my husband is the eldest son, we didn't have much choice. I thought it was ridiculous to live with my in-laws in this day and age, but both my husband and my mother-in-law hold on to old-fashioned values. Moreover, my father-in-law is no longer with us, and my husband expressed his concern for his mother. I have no idea what he's worried about. She's still so full of life. My brother-in-law is single and working overseas, so I guess that's just how it has to be. But I still hate it. Now even my husband has started being mean to me, following in his mother's footsteps. He never said anything mean before we got married, but his attitude changed drastically. I feel deceived. He's always acting superior and he always yells at me. It gives me a headache. Hey you, why is my shirt so wrinkled? Ha, is it wrinkled? Yeah, I'll be embarrassed at work like this. Can't you even iron properly? Why can't you do something so simple? No, I did iron it. Your properly is not proper at all. Realize that. What a useless wife you are. That's so mean. You don't have to say it like that. Are you talking back to me? Your face is as wrinkled as this shirt, and you're annoying. Seriously, you look older than you are. It's a turnoff. Oh really? Before we got married, he used to call me adorable. He treated me like a princess. But now he insults my parents and laughs about it. I don't understand why he would say such a thing. I'm not wrinkled or anything. It crossed my mind that he's actually balding for his age. I even found myself wishing that he would go completely bald one day. Our marriage is still pretty new, but I'm concerned about the future. Sometimes the word divorce even flashes through my mind. I was exhausted every day, and once I finished the housework after getting home from work, I felt like I was about to collapse. But my mother-in-law never helped with the chores. She seems to spend her whole day blankly watching TV. There were crumbs from snacks on the floor in front of the TV, and a lot of them. I had to clean them up, and I wish she would at least use a plate. Then, after dinner one day, my mother-in-law started to speak. Hey, let's all go to a spa resort when the new year comes. Oh, that sounds great, I replied. All right, I'll make the reservation. I'll get on it first thing tomorrow. Thanks, Mom, my husband said, beaming with joy. My husband and mother-in-law seemed very happy. I didn't really want to go with these people, but I was interested in the spa resort itself. I love visiting spa resorts, and this one was famous enough to be featured on TV recently. I thought it could be a great memory if I could ignore these annoying people, so inside, I was actually excited. After this, my mother-in-law said she had something to discuss. I wondered what it was and headed to the living room. You know we only have a small car, right? So, I was hoping we could borrow your family's minivan. After all, we can load lots of luggage in it. Alright, I guess my father has both a minivan and a small car. He usually commutes in the small car and uses the minivan for shopping trips or camping, which is his hobby. When I called my father, he readily agreed to lend it to us. With that, we welcomed the end of the year vacation. I had to clean the house, so it was again incredibly busy. However, thinking that a spa resort was waiting for me after getting through this year-end period helped me push through. As expected, my mother-in-law wouldn't move from the sofa. She laid there all the time, looking like a statue. Then, the morning of New Year's Day arrived. I woke up thinking about the long-awaited spa resort, but was surprised when I looked at the alarm clock. I had overslept. What? It's already 8:30, but David isn't here. Why? My husband, who should have been sleeping next to me, wasn't there either. I thought he might be in the bathroom, but he wasn't. Huh? Where is everyone? Did they go somewhere? I peeked into my mother-in-law's bedroom, but she wasn't there either. I began to wonder if they left without me. In a panic, I checked my smartphone. I always charge my phone in the living room before going to bed. There was a text notification on my smartphone. It was from my mother-in-law. We're going to have fun. We never booked a place for you. You can spend a lonely New Year. It's okay if the bride doesn't come. So my mother-in-law never intended to take me with them from the start, and she planned to enjoy it with my husband. I was really sad at the same time. I was also very angry. It's terrible to deliberately stop my alarm clock to make me oversleep. I suspect the reason she made me drink a lot of alcohol the night before was to make me pass out. I regretted drinking that much, although it's a relief that she didn't drug me. I was irritated about her pushing drinks on me. Well, there's nothing I can do even if I get angry, so I decided I had to enjoy myself alone at home. I really wanted to go home to my parents, but they're also away on a trip by plane, so it's pointless to go back. Though I ordered a pizza for delivery that day and spent a lonely day. Then my mother-in-law and husband returned from their trip. They had brought smiles on their faces. It was so fun. It was the best. I want to stay there again, of course, without you, Mary. Here, this is the souvenir. What is this? It's a stone I found lying around. It suits you perfectly. Oh, is that so? I couldn't help but think that my mother-in-law was extremely spiteful. Frustrated, I went to return the minivan to my parents' house. I thought they would be home by now. When I arrived at my parents' house, my father came to greet me. Did you enjoy the spa resort? That famous spa should have been quite satisfying. I didn't go because I'm the bride. Well, I was told by my mother-in-law that it's fine if the bride doesn't come. I was left behind when I woke up in the morning. No one was there. What? After that, my father started to do something. Then he had me sit in the passenger seat of the minivan and started driving. The car was headed back to my in-laws' house. When I glanced at my father's face as he drove, he seemed to be angry. Well, any father would get angry if their daughter was treated that way. But I was taken aback because I had never seen such a look on my usually calm father's face. Then my father stormed into my in-laws' house with something in his hand. My mother-in-law came out. Oh, hello, and Happy New Year. Sorry for borrowing your minivan. Happy New Year. Speaking of which, you left our daughter behind, didn't you? No, Mary said she had a fever and couldn't go, so we had to leave her behind reluctantly. I even offered to take care of her. My mother-in-law was lying through her teeth with a smirk on her face. She definitely never said anything like that, and I wasn't even sick with a cold. I wondered how she could tell such an obvious lie. I thought something must be wrong with her brain. Oh, really? But our daughter said she was left behind. She told us she received a message on text saying it's fine if the bride doesn't come. Did I say that? I don't remember. You did. Look at this text. I showed her the text messages. However, she still insisted she was innocent. I was surprised at how thick-skinned she was to still deny it even cornered this far. In a sense, it was admirable. You're still saying that, huh? You're truly a sad person. Oh, by the way, can I charge you for the cleaning of the car interior? What? Why? Because you dirtied it with a married man nonetheless? What a filthy and disgusting scene. What? What are you talking about? This right here. What my father had in his hand was a dash cam. This one has dual cameras, so it can record not only the outside but also the inside of the car. The advantage of being able to record the inside of the car is that it can provide evidence that you were driving safely. My mother-in-law doesn't know much about car supplies or cars in general, so there's a chance she didn't realize this was a dual camera. But what was she doing with a married man in the first place? I regretted watching the footage that my father played back. After all, there were images of my mother-in-law in an indecent posture with an unknown man. Even though my father-in-law is no longer in this world, it's insane to do such a thing with a married man. And what on earth was she doing in her family car? This was on the exact day you borrowed the car. Oh, how disgusting. Wait, this doesn't mean we were doing anything dirty. It's not something perverted. My mother-in-law was in a panic, fumbling and stammering on the spot. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was on the brink of crying. I found myself curious and somewhat amused about when she would finally break down. Maybe I'm being cruel, but after all the time she tormented me, she deserves this much. I couldn't be sympathetic or kind to someone like her. Then she began making pathetic excuses. Her reasoning was all over the place. It was clear she was flustered, yet she was desperate to defend herself. Suddenly, my father pulled another item from his pocket. It was a photograph. The picture showed my mother-in-law and the man from the video engaged in assorted acts in broad daylight. It was unthinkable. The background of the picture suggested it took place somewhere secluded, but the audacity to do this in the daytime was still shocking. You wouldn't have seen these if you hadn't been mean to my dear Mary. Why do you have that picture? Because I'm a detective, remember? Oh, do you recall now? Look, I've been telling you this all along, haven't I? My father is a detective, which explains why he had such a photograph. Coincidentally, the wife of the married man in the picture had hired him for an infidelity investigation. It turns out the wife of this man hired me to investigate her husband's affair. I was surprised to discover you were the other woman. I was going to inform her next week, but I didn't expect to show you this so soon. Ha! No, I'm innocent. I was just forced into an unpleasant situation. I am not at fault. Please don't tell his wife. It was against your will, was it? You seem to be enjoying yourself. We also have video footage of you whispering sweet words to the man. Do you want to see it? I'm sorry. My mother-in-law collapsed to her knees and burst into tears. I watched her in a pitiful state with a cold glare. Sensing that unusual situation, my husband arrived. I had run out of patience with him too, and I proposed a divorce. I've had enough. I want to end this. Let's get divorced. What? I'll go crazy if I stay in this horrible family any longer, so I'm leaving. Hold on. What will happen to our living expenses if you leave? I was fired a while ago. My husband dropped a bombshell. Apparently, he had been fired at the end of the year. I was taken aback. As he had not told me this despite knowing his job was terminated, he had still decided to go on a spa resort trip. He was a complete fool. I felt I had no choice but to divorce him. I took off my wedding ring and left it there. My husband desperately tried to stop me. Wait, can't you forgive me for not taking you on the spa resort trip? It's not just about the trip. I don't want to be with you or your mother anymore. If you want to live with your mother that much, then go ahead, you mama's boy. Please wait, don't go. I got a lawyer and proceeded with a divorce. My ex-husband seems to be having trouble managing his living expenses now that I'm gone. I thought he should find a new job quickly, but having been fired from his last job for theft, he'll probably struggle to find a new one. His previous company had fired him because he had been caught stealing. Apparently, they decided they couldn't trust him and didn't need someone like that. Unsurprisingly, the wife of my mother-in-law's lover demanded compensation for the affair. She ended up spending all the money left by my father-in-law to settle the payment. I haven't seen my ex-husband or ex-mother-in-law since, but I imagine they're probably living the hard life. It doesn't matter to me anymore. Currently, I'm living alone and enjoying my work. I made the right decision not to have a child with my ex-husband. Now I am enjoying a peaceful life and would be happy if I found a new love if such an opportunity arises. This is my plan to make sure to choose wisely.
In the heart of the city stood a quaint toy store, a sanctuary where joy was measured in smiles and laughter. That's where my story begins, where fate decided to play its hand. I'm Lily, a 29-year-old who found solace among the aisles of toys, each one holding a story waiting to be told. It was a regular day, the store buzzing with the usual chatter, when he walked in, Jake, the man who unknowingly was about to turn my world upside down. He wandered through the aisles with a look of determination, his eyes scanning the shelves for the perfect gifts. "Excuse me," he said, approaching me with a gentle smile, "I'm on a mission to find the coolest toys for the children of my friends. Any recommendations?" I smiled, pointing towards the latest action figures. "You can't go wrong with these. Kids love them, and they're our top sellers this month." Jake picked up one of the figures, examining it with an intrigued expression. "Looks like you really know your stuff. Do you enjoy working here?" I laughed, a warm feeling blooming inside. "I do. It's more than just a job. It's like being a part of countless happy childhood memories. But tell me more about you. Is being the cool uncle a full-time job?" His laughter echoed through the store, a sound that felt oddly comforting. "It feels like it sometimes. But seriously, my family is pretty big, parents, 2 younger sisters. One is about to get married and move to another city. It's chaotic, loud, but I wouldn't have it any other way." We continued to chat, our conversation flowing effortlessly. I shared my story, how life had been a solitary journey since my grandmother passed, leaving me her small, cherished house. Jake listened with genuine interest, his eyes never leaving mine. "It sounds like you've had your share of challenges," he said softly. Your grandmother must have been a remarkable woman to raise someone as strong and kind as you. The store started to quiet down, signaling the end of the day. Our conversation, however, was far from over. It's not often you meet someone who understands the value of family, I remarked. Your family sounds wonderful. A bit like the big, happy family I've always imagined. Jake's gaze held a warmth that made my heart skip a beat. They are wonderful, and a bit overwhelming at times. But you know, maybe one day you could meet them. I have a feeling they'd love you. As we parted ways that evening, the air was thick with unspoken promises and possibilities. Little did I know, this chance encounter, this hopeful meeting, was the beginning of a journey full of unexpected twists and turns. The day I was to meet Jake's family, my heart fluttered like a butterfly in a garden of hope. Dressed in my best, I rehearsed conversations and imagined laughter-filled rooms. Jake held my hand as we walked up to his family's apartment, his grip reassuring yet tense. "Ready to dive into the circus?" Jake joked, trying to lighten the mood. I squeezed his hand, a nervous smile on my face. "As ready as I'll ever be. Just promise me they won't throw any pies." The door swung open to reveal a bustling living room. Jake's mom, a stout woman with sharp eyes, scrutinized me from head to toe. His dad, a towering figure with a booming voice, offered a brief nod. And then there were Sarah and Megan, Jake's younger sisters, their eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. "Family, meet Lily. Lily, this is the crew I warned you about," Jake introduced, a hint of pride in his voice. I extended my hand, my voice barely above a whisper. "It's so nice to meet you all. I've heard so much about you." Jake's mom was the first to break the silence. "So, you're the girl who's been keeping our Jake so occupied. Tell us about yourself. Jake mentioned you work at a toy store?" I nodded, feeling their eyes on me. "Yes, I love it there. It's like being surrounded by joy every day. And, well, I was raised by my grandmother. She left me her house, and that's where Jake and I—" Sarah cut me off with a laugh that felt more like a jab. "Raised by your grandmother, huh? That explains the antique vibe you've got going on. What is this, a retro fashion statement?" The room erupted with laughter. Jake's dad chuckled. "Good one, Sarah. Lily, you'll get used to our family humor." I forced a smile, my heart sinking. This wasn't the warmth I had anticipated. It felt more like walking into a frost. Jake tried to smooth things over. "Come on, guys. Let's not start the roast just yet. Lily's got a great sense of style. Right, Lily?" But the damage was done. The evening dragged on, each minute heavier than the last. Sarah and Megan's remarks, veiled as jokes, felt like thorns. Jake's parents, though not as overt, had a dismissiveness that stung. And Jake, bless him, seemed caught between a rock and a hard place, his laughter forced, his glances apologetic. As we left that night, the door closing behind us felt like the end of a performance I never wanted to be a part of. Jake's hand in mine felt distant, and the family I had hoped to embrace seemed like a mirage that had vanished, leaving behind a bitter aftertaste of reality. "Sorry about that," Jake murmured as we walked down the corridor. "They can be a bit overwhelming. But it'll get better, I promise." I nodded, the words tasting like ash. "It's fine, Jake. Maybe it's just first meeting jitters." But deep down, I knew. This was more than jitters. This was a glimpse into a world I wasn't sure I belonged in. A world where warmth was replaced by cold judgment, and acceptance was a currency I didn't possess. And as we walked back to my quiet, humble house, I couldn't help but wonder if the fairy tale I had dreamed of was just that, a dream, now slowly dissolving into the disappointing introduction of reality. The evening I walked into my home, expecting the usual quiet comfort, only to find it disrupted, remains etched in my memory. The lights were on, a sure sign someone else was there. A sense of intrusion crept over me. I dialed Jake's number, my voice trembling with unease. "Jake, I think someone's in our house. The lights are on, and you're not home." His laughter on the other end jolted me. "Oh, that's just Sarah." I gave her our spare key. She wanted a place to chill. I stood frozen, disbelief and anger intertwining. "You gave your sister a key to our house, without asking me?" Jake's tone was dismissive. "Come on, Lily. She's my sister. Plus, it's not like she's a stranger." As I entered the living room, there she was, Sarah, lounging on our couch, my personal laptop open in front of her. The sight felt like a violation of my private space. "Sarah, what are you doing?" "That's my laptop," I said, my voice firm yet controlled. She didn't even bother looking up. "Relax, Lily. We're family now. I figured what's yours is mine, right?" That evening, when Jake returned, I confronted him. "Jake, your sister can't just barge into our house and use my things without permission. It's not right." His response was infuriating. "Lily, you're overreacting. She's just using the laptop. Don't make a big deal out of it." "But it is a big deal to me, Jake. It's about respect and privacy," I argued, my frustration growing. Jake just shook his head. "I don't see the problem here. She's family. You need to be more accommodating." From then on, Sarah's visits became a regular occurrence. She'd walk in whenever she pleased, treating our home like it was her own. It wasn't just the intrusion that bothered me, it was her complete disregard for our privacy. She'd leave dishes in the sink, move my things around, and never once asked if it was okay. Every time I brought it up with Jake, he brushed it off. "She's just comfortable here. Isn't that a good thing? Why are you so hung up on these little things?" But they weren't little things to me. They were the threads of respect and boundaries being pulled apart. My home, once my sanctuary, was now a free-for-all, and I felt like a guest in my own space. One day, I came home to find Sarah sprawled on the couch, a pile of her laundry on the living room floor. "Sarah, this isn't a laundromat. You can't just do your laundry here," I said, my patience wearing thin. She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, Lily. It's not like I'm asking you to do it for me. Plus, your washer is way better than ours." I couldn't believe the audacity. This was more than just familial comfort, it was entitlement. And Jake's inability to see that, to stand up for our space, was driving a wedge between us. Weekends used to be my retreat, a time to unwind and recharge. But that changed when Jake's family decided our home was their new weekend getaway. It started one Saturday morning. I was greeted not by the quiet I cherished, but by the loud chatter and laughter of Jake's family sprawled across my living room. "Morning, Lily. Hope you don't mind, we thought we'd spend the day here. Our place is a bit cramped at the moment," Jake's mom announced cheerily as if they'd done nothing out of the ordinary. I stood there, dumbfounded, my private sanctuary turned into a public domain without my consent. Sure, I wasn't expecting visitors, but make yourselves at home," I managed to say, the words tasting bitter. Jake, who had seemingly forgotten the concept of personal space, chimed in. "Isn't it great, Lily? The more, the merrier, right?" The day dragged on, their presence an overbearing weight. The living room, once my haven of peace, was now a mess of loud conversations, clutter, and the overwhelming scent of food. They acted as if it was their right, their house. As the day turned into evening, Jake's mom called out from the chaos, "Lily, dear, could you whip up something for dinner? You're such a fantastic cook, and we're all famished." The audacity of the request left me reeling. "Actually, I was planning to order in tonight," I replied, trying to mask my frustration. Jake's dad laughed, a booming sound that filled the room. "Why order when we have a chef in the house? Come on, Lily, show us what you've got." I felt trapped, my own desires, and comfort overshadowed by their imposing presence. Cooking in my kitchen, I felt like a stranger, an outsider catering to the whims of uninvited guests. Later that evening, I tried to talk to Jake about it. "Jake, this isn't working for me. Your family can't just take over our home every weekend." Jake, ever the family man, just shrugged. "They're just being family, Lily. This is what families do. You're overthinking it." "But it's our home, Jake. Our space. There should be limits, boundaries," I argued, my voice a mix of plea and demand. He didn't get it, or he chose not to. "Lily, they're not doing any harm. We have the space, why not share it?" I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, the sounds of their laughter and chatter a stark reminder of how my sanctuary had been breached. My home, my rules, my peace, all invaded without a second thought. And the man I shared my life with couldn't, or wouldn't, see the lines being crossed. The once peaceful sanctuary of my home had become a battlefield, the air thick with tension and unspoken words. After countless disputes over the invasion of my privacy, I had retreated to my bedroom, the only space I foolishly thought was still mine. But even that last refuge was about to be snatched away. It was early Saturday morning, the kind of morning where the world should have been still and quiet. But tranquility was a stranger in my own home. I was jolted awake by the sound of my bedroom door being flung open. Disoriented, I blinked against the harsh light as the figures of Jake's parents loomed in the doorway. "What? What are you doing?" My voice was barely a whisper, shock rendering me almost speechless. They didn't even flinch at my obvious discomfort. Instead, Jake's mom, with a sweep of her hand that felt like she was claiming territory, announced, "We've decided this will be our room now. It's the nicest in the house, after all." Jake's dad nodded in agreement, his eyes scanning the room, not as a guest, but as someone assessing their property. "Yep, this will do. And don't worry, we left our apartment to Sarah. She needs it more than we do." Their words hit me like a physical blow. This was no ordinary intrusion, this was a full-blown takeover. My room, my private space, was being stripped away right in front of me. Shaken, I scrambled out of bed and found Jake in the kitchen, oblivious or indifferent to the chaos. "Jake, we need to talk. Now. Your parents can't just take over my room like this." Jake sipped his coffee, unfazed. "Lily, why are you making such a big deal out of this? They're just trying to be comfortable. Besides, you can stay in the attic, right?" His words stung more than I thought possible. The attic? "Jake, are you listening to yourself? This is my house, and your family is treating it like a hotel." He shrugged, a gesture that spoke volumes of where his loyalties lay. "Well, it's their house too now. You can fix up the attic. It could be a nice project for you." I stood there, disbelief and rage coursing through me. My home, my sanctuary, was being carved up and handed out like slices of pie, and the man I had pledged my life to was holding the knife. As Jake walked away, leaving me to grapple with the reality of the situation, I realized I was alone in this fight. The home I had built, the life I had envisioned, was being dismantled, piece by piece. And the one person who should have been my partner, my ally, was the architect of my despair. But as I stood in the shell of what used to be my refuge, a fierce determination took root. This was my home, my life, and I wasn't about to let it be taken from me. The battle lines were drawn, and I, Lily, was ready to reclaim what was rightfully mine. The night before Jake and his family left for the wedding, the house was thick with tension and unspoken words. They laid down their plans, like a king dictating to his subjects. "We're off tomorrow, Lily, for Megan's wedding. You'll have the house to yourself for a week. Should be plenty of time to get your new attic room ready," Jake's mom declared with a smirk. Jake chimed in, a cold look in his eyes. "Yeah, Lily. It's only fair. Mom and Dad need the space. It's a small sacrifice, really." Their laughter echoed through the house, a cruel soundtrack to the mockery of my life. The door closed behind them the next morning, the silence they left behind heavy with the weight of their words. But as the sound of their car faded away, a new resolve rose within me. I had always thought a big family was a blessing, but their presence in my life had turned into a curse, one I was determined to break. The first step was clear and unwavering. I marched to the local hardware store, the determination in my steps ringing louder than the jingle of the door as I entered. "I need new locks for my house," I declared to the clerk, my voice a mixture of resolve and newfound strength. As I returned home, the new locks in hand, each click and turn of the screws as I installed them felt like a proclamation of my independence, a reclamation of my space. This house, filled with memories of my grandmother and the dreams I had for my own life, was mine and mine alone. With the new locks firmly in place, I turned my attention to the next task. Jake's belongings, once scattered throughout the house, were methodically packed away. Each item I placed in the boxes was like shedding a layer of the life I no longer recognized. As the week passed, my anticipation grew. The day of their return loomed over me, but the fear that once might have gripped me had transformed into something fiercer, a readiness to confront whatever came next. And then the day arrived. The sound of their car pulling up, the confused voices as they found their keys no longer worked, the rising volume as reality set in, it was a symphony of my making. "What's this, Lily? Playing games now? Open this door." Jake's voice was a mix of command and desperation, his words hammering against the firm resolve that shielded me. I opened the window slightly, my voice steady and unwavering. "It's no game, Jake. It's reality. The reality where I reclaim my home and my life. Your things are outside. You can take them and go." His mom's voice cut through next, sharp and accusatory. "You think you can just throw us out like trash? After we welcomed you into our family?" The irony of her words almost made me laugh. "Welcomed? No, you invaded, you disrespected, and you overstepped every boundary. This is my home, and it's time you all accepted that." The voices rose, a cacophony of disbelief and anger. Jake's dad, his voice booming, joined in. "You can't do this to us, Lily. We're family. Family sticks together." I shook my head, a slight smile playing on my lips. Family respects each other. Family supports and loves, not belittles and takes over. What you call sticking together felt more like being trapped. That's not family, that's a hostage situation. Their pleas turned into threats, their threats into insults. But with each word they hurled at me, my resolve only grew stronger. I had built a fortress, not just of locks and doors, but of self-respect and dignity. As the reality of the situation settled in, Jake's voice, once full of authority, now trembled with a hint of realization. "Lily, please. Let's talk about this. We can sort it out." But the time for talking had passed long ago. "There's nothing left to talk about, Jake. I gave you and your family every chance to be part of my life, my home. But you chose to treat it like a free-for-all. You chose to stand by and watch as they disrespected me, in my own home. That was your choice. Now, this is mine." The neighbors, drawn by the commotion, watched from a distance. Whispers and glances were exchanged, the drama unfolding before them, a stark reminder of how quickly the veneer of civility can crack. And when the noise became too much, when the insults and the banging on the door threatened to breach my newfound peace, I called the authorities. The arrival of the police was the final punctuation in a long and exhausting sentence. I explained the situation, my voice a testament to the journey I had been on. The officers, their faces a blend of sympathy and professionalism, turned to Jake and his family. "You need to leave now. If you refuse, we'll have to take further action." As they finally collected Jake's belongings and retreated, a profound sense of calm enveloped me. The house, once a battlefield, was now quiet. The door, once a revolving entry for disrespect, was now a barrier against it. A week had passed since I took a stand, the quiet in my home a stark contrast to the turmoil that had once reigned. I was sipping my coffee, the warmth a gentle reminder of the peace I had reclaimed, when a knock shattered the tranquility. It was Sarah, her face twisted in anger, standing on my doorstep like an unwelcome storm. "Lily, you think you're so high and mighty, kicking everyone out? You're nothing but a selfish, greedy woman." Sarah spat the words out, her voice dripping with resentment. I leaned against the doorframe, my stance firm. "Sarah, this is my home, and I will not be insulted in it. Your family overstayed their welcome, and I did what was necessary." She scoffed, her laugh harsh and jarring. "Necessary? You've turned everything upside down. I had the apartment to myself, and now? Now it's a circus again. Mom, Dad, Jake, all crammed in because of you." Her words were meant to wound, but I only felt a profound sense of relief. "That's not my problem, Sarah. You all made your choices, and now you're living with them." Sarah's face reddened, her anger a tangible force. "You can't just toss us aside like this. We're family." I shook my head, a sad smile on my lips. "Family doesn't treat each other the way you treated me. I gave you all chances, but you chose to ignore them. I deserve respect and peace in my own home." Her words became a blur, insults and accusations thrown aimlessly. But they no longer touched me. I had built a wall, not just of locks and doors, but of self-respect and resolve. As she continued her tirade, I realized the truth in her words. Her anger wasn't just about being thrown out, it was about the loss of her comfort, her space. And that realization only strengthened my resolve. After what felt like an eternity, I cut her off. "Sarah, this conversation is over. Your family's actions brought you to this point. I suggest you focus on finding a solution, instead of wasting your time here." With that, I closed the door, the sound a final note to her symphony of fury. I filed for divorce, my heart heavy but certain. Jake's pleas, his family's insults, all blocked and left behind. I was free, truly free, not just from their physical presence, but from the weight of their disrespect. I started to rebuild, my home once again a sanctuary, my life my own. As days turned into weeks, the memory of them faded, like a bad dream in the morning light. My peace was hard-won, but it was mine, a testament to the strength I never knew I had. And in that peace, I found not just solace, but a profound sense of triumph. I had claimed my life back, one lock, one packed box, one signed paper at a time. And as I stood in my reclaimed space, I knew that this was just the beginning. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. That's how I met Marco. My name's Cora, and I was 28, working as a fitness trainer at a local gym, living a life as structured and disciplined as my fitness routines. That's until Marco walked in one day, looking for a quick workout, and ended up changing my whole life's course. "Hey, I'm Marco," he said, flashing a smile that could light up the darkest of rooms. "Heard this is the best place to get in shape. Mind showing me the ropes?" I raised an eyebrow, sizing him up. He didn't look like the usual gym type, more like he spent his days charming his way through life. "Sure, Marco. Follow my lead, and you'll be in shape in no time. But I warn you, I don't go easy on anyone." Marco chuckled, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "Wouldn't have it any other way. Lead on, Cora." Training Marco was like trying to tame a wild stallion. He had energy for days and a stubborn streak to match. But beneath the jokes and easy banter, there was a genuine respect, a connection that neither of us could deny. The days turned into weeks, and our sessions at the gym became the highlight of my days. It wasn't just about the workouts anymore, it was the laughter, the stories, the shared moments in between the sweat and hard work. One evening, as we were wrapping up, Marco turned to me, a serious look replacing his usual grin. "Cora, I've got to tell you something. I'm not just here for the workouts. I'm here for you. You've got this fire, this strength that I've never seen in anyone else. And I'm crazy about you." I was taken aback. This was Marco, the guy who joked about everything, now standing in front of me, bare and honest. "Marco, I don't know what to say. You're not what I expected. But I can't deny it, there's something between us. Something real." That was the start of our whirlwind romance. It was intense, passionate, like a storm that sweeps everything in its path. And before I knew it, I was saying I do to the man who had walked into my gym and turned my world upside down. But the fairy tale didn't last long. After the wedding, Marco dropped a bombshell that would set the stage for the battles to come. "Cora, we need to move into my mother's house. I've got strong family ties, and it's important for me to be there for them." I felt my stomach drop. Maria, his mother, was a force to be reckoned with, her sharp tongue and critical eye a stark contrast to Marco's warmth. And then there was Sophia, his sister, a mirror image of her mother's arrogance and disdain. "Marco, are you sure about this? Your mother and Sophia, our relationship is strained, to put it mildly. Is this really the best idea?" I asked, trying to keep the worry out of my voice. Marco took my hands in his gaze earnest. "Cora, I know it's not ideal. But family is everything to me. We'll make it work, I promise. You, me, and our little family against the world." Moving into Marco's family home felt like stepping onto a battlefield every day. Maria's house was a fortress, her rules, her way, or the highway. And Sophia, she was like her shadow, echoing her mother's every frown and snide remark. "Morning, Cora," Maria would say, her voice dripping with something that was anything but warmth. "Don't forget the dishes need doing, and the living room needs a good dusting. We run a tight ship here." I'd nod, biting back the retort that threatened to spill. "Of course, Maria. I wouldn't want the house anything less than perfect." Sophia would smirk from her perch at the kitchen table, her eyes scanning me like I was some bug under a microscope. "Yeah, Cora. And try to keep up, will ya? We don't need any dead weight around here." The days were long, the work unending. It was like living in a loop, each day a repeat of the last. Cleaning, cooking, trying to find my footing in a house that felt more like a minefield. Marco was there, but not really. His restaurant was his world, and I was just a ghost in his family home. But then, life decided to throw me a curveball. I was pregnant. The news should have been a beacon of joy, but in Maria's house, it was just another ripple in already troubled waters. "Pregnant, huh?" Maria's voice was flat, her eyes hard. "Well, don't expect any special treatment. This house doesn't run itself, you know." I held my ground, my hand instinctively resting on my belly. "I don't expect special treatment, Maria. But I do expect some understanding. I'm carrying a child, your grandchild." That shut her up, if only for a moment. But it didn't last. The chores piled up, the glares grew sharper, and the house felt smaller with each passing day. Sophia was no help. She watched me struggle, a satisfied smirk never far from her lips. "You're slowing down, Cora," she'd taunt. "Can't handle a bit of housework? What kind of mother are you gonna be?" I wanted to scream, to lash out. But I held it in. For Marco, for the tiny heartbeat that was growing stronger each day. The tension was a constant companion, an uninvited guest at every meal, every moment. Marco, he tried, in his way. But his family, his restaurant, they pulled him in 1,000 different directions, and I was just one more voice in the cacophony of his life. "Marco, talk to them, please," I pleaded one night, the weight of the day heavy on my shoulders. "Your mother, Sophia, they treat me like I'm nothing, like I don't belong." Marco sighed, a tired sound that spoke volumes. "Cora, they're just set in their ways. It's how they've always been. Just give it time, it'll get better. But it didn't get better. It got harder, the house more suffocating, Maria and Sophia more relentless. And me, I was just trying to keep my head above water, to protect the tiny life that depended on me. As I lay in bed each night, the moon casting shadows across the room, I made a silent vow. I wouldn't let them break me. I wouldn't let their words, their disdain, define me. I was stronger than they knew, and one day, they'd see. One day, this house, this battlefield, it would be mine to conquer. Becoming a mother was supposed to be the most beautiful chapter of my life. But in Maria's house, it felt more like a trial by fire. Luca was my little bundle of joy, my ray of sunshine in the storm. Yet, every cry, every smile, was overshadowed by the relentless pressure and criticism from Maria and Sophia. "Really, Cora, can't you keep that child quiet?" Maria would snap, her words sharp as knives, every time Luca so much as whimpered. I held Luca closer, whispering words of comfort, shielding him from the harshness of his own grandmother's words. "He's just a baby, Maria. Babies cry. That's how they communicate." Sophia would roll her eyes, her voice dripping with disdain. "Oh, please. You're just not doing it right, Cora. Maybe if you paid more attention to him instead of feeling sorry for yourself, he'd be quieter." Their words stung, each one a reminder of how out of place I felt in this house, in this family. But it wasn't just the words. It was the way they looked at me, the way they scrutinized my every move, especially after my body had changed from the pregnancy. The weight I'd gained became their favorite topic, a source of endless ridicule. "Looks like those fitness trainer days are long gone, huh, Cora?" Maria would chuckle, eyeing my figure with a smirk. "Better lay off the sweets if you want to fit into your old clothes again." I clenched my fists, forcing a smile to hide the hurt. "I'm proud of my body, Maria. It brought Luca into this world. The weight? It's temporary. But the love I have for my son, that's forever." But my words, my defiance, it didn't matter to them. I was the outsider, the intruder in their perfect little world. And no matter how hard I tried, it never seemed to be enough. Enough was enough. The constant belittling from Maria and Sophia wasn't just chipping away at my spirit, it was igniting a fire within me. A fire to reclaim my life, my body, and my self-respect. I decided to take my journey into my own hands, right there in the four walls of that suffocating house. I started simple, turning a corner of my room into my personal gym. It wasn't much, just a mat, some weights, and a determination as strong as steel. "This is it, Luca," I whispered to my little boy, cradling him in one arm while setting up my phone to record. "Mommy's turning it all around, starting now." The first few days were tough, the exercises leaving me breathless, my muscles screaming. But each drop of sweat, each aching limb, felt like a triumph. "Think you can just bounce back, Cora?" Maria sneered one day, watching me pant through my routine. "It's not that easy, you know. Takes more than a few stretches to fix what's broken." I wiped my brow, fixing her with a steely gaze. "Watch me, Maria. I'm not just fixing what's broken. I'm building something stronger. And I don't need your approval or your snide comments." That's when I decided to go public with my journey. I started a YouTube channel and an Instagram page, sharing every struggle, every victory. It was raw, it was real, and to my surprise, it resonated with so many out there. "Mom, look at this," I'd say to Luca, showing him the screen filled with comments and likes. "We're not alone. There are so many rooting for us." And then came the advertisers, their offers turning my little corner of the internet into a thriving source of income. I was stunned, overwhelmed, but above all, I was empowered. "Can you believe this, Luca?" I'd whisper, tucking him into bed. "We're doing it. We're really doing it." But with every success, the tension in the house grew thicker. Maria and Sophia couldn't stand it, the way I'd turned their ridicule into my armor, their disdain into my driving force. "What's this now, Cora? Playing the star while the rest of us do the real work?" Sophia spat one day, her eyes venomous. I stood my ground, Luca on my hip, my heart stronger than ever. It's called turning the tide, Sophia. It's called taking back control. And if that bothers you, well, that's your problem, not mine. The house that once felt like a prison was now just a backdrop. My world was larger, brighter, filled with the love of my son and the support of a community that saw me, the real me. The success of my online channels was a sweet victory, but it brought a new kind of challenge. Marco was stunned by the numbers, the comments, the sheer scale of it. But his pride was bruised. He didn't want the world, especially his family, to see the shift in our roles. Cora, it's incredible. But you know how my mother and Sophia are. Please, let's keep this between us. I don't want them thinking I'm not the provider. He pleaded one evening, his eyes begging for understanding. I sighed, the weight of his request heavy on my shoulders. Marco, I'm proud of what I've achieved. It's not just about the money, it's about respect, about independence. He nodded, his hand reaching for mine. I know, and I respect that. But in this house, it's complicated. Let's just keep it our little secret, for now. I agreed, reluctantly, and began transferring $4,000 a month to Marco's account. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on me. Maria and Sophia continued their tirade, oblivious to the truth. They saw me as a leech, living off their precious son and brother. You're just a freeloader, Cora. Always taking, never contributing. Maria would snarl, her words sharp as ever. I bit back my retort, the secret of my success a silent shield against her barbs. I contribute in my own way, Maria. Not that you'd ever acknowledge it. Sophia was no better. What do you even do all day, Cora? Lounge around while we do all the real work? Their ignorance was a bitter pill, but I swallowed it. My focus was Luca, my channels, my newfound strength. I'd walk with my son in the park, my camera a constant companion, capturing the moments, the workouts, the real me that they refused to see. Cora, you're wasting your time with those videos, Maria would scoff, watching me edit my latest post. But the numbers told a different story. The subscribers, the views, the comments, they were real, tangible. They were mine. Maybe to you, Maria. But to me, and to thousands out there, it's anything but a waste, I'd reply, my confidence unshaken. Marco's restaurant troubles added another layer to our already complicated life. He came to me one day, his pride barely holding back his desperation. Cora, the restaurant, it's struggling. I need help. Would you lend me some money? Just to tide things over? His vulnerability was a rare sight, and it tugged at my heartstrings. Of course, Marco. I'll help. But this isn't just a loan, it's an investment. In us, in our family. His relief was palpable, but it was tinged with the unspoken truth. I was the lifeline, the silent savior of the family facade. And as I transferred $10,000, as I watched the gratitude and the guilt in his eyes, I knew the balance had shifted. Time in that house felt like a ticking bomb, and each day brought us closer to the explosion. Sophia's marriage brought her husband, Rick, into an already cramped space. His presence only added to the chaos and tension that had become a constant in the house. You two just take up space, Maria would sneer, her words cutting through the crowded living room. You're nothing but freeloaders, Cora. You and that kid. I clenched my teeth, hugging Luca closer. We're family, Maria. Or at least, that's what a house like this is supposed to mean. But when Sophia announced her pregnancy, Maria's attitude shifted into something even harsher, more direct. This house is getting crowded, Cora. And frankly, you and your boy are just in the way. The words stung, but before I could muster a response, Marco dropped a bombshell of his own at dinner. I have to go out of town for a few weeks. Restaurant business, he said, avoiding my gaze. A few weeks in this madhouse without even the slightest buffer Marco provided felt like a sentence I couldn't bear. You're leaving? Now? With everything going on? I asked, my voice barely a whisper over the lump in my throat. He didn't meet my eyes. I have to, Cora. It's important. And just like that, he was gone. The door shut behind him, and the weight of his absence settled over the house like a thick fog. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy for Luca. We went for our walks, did our workouts in the park, anything to escape the suffocating atmosphere of the house. But when we returned from kindergarten one day, the sight that greeted us froze me in my tracks. Our belongings, bags, suitcases, Luca's toys, were piled up outside the front door like garbage. Mommy, what's happening? Luca's small voice was laced with confusion and fear. I swallowed hard, fighting back the tears as I approached the door. Maria, Sophia, what is this? Why are our things outside? I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and disbelief. The response came cold and merciless from the other side of the door. You heard me, Cora. The house is too crowded, and you two are just taking up space. It's time for you to leave. Find somewhere else to call home. Maria's voice was like a knife, and Sophia's echoing laughter only twisted it deeper. I stood there, my whole world collapsing around me. And what should I tell Marco? What will you say to your son when he asks where his wife and child are? Their laughter was the only answer I got. It was clear, in their eyes, we were expendable, an inconvenience easily discarded. With a heavy heart and a mind swirling with shock and betrayal, I gathered our belongings. Holding Luca's hand tightly, I stepped away from the house that was never a home. The pain was sharp, the betrayal bitter, but it was the clarity of the moment that struck me the most. This was the end of one chapter, a chapter of struggle and pain. But it was also the beginning of something new, something ours. I rented an apartment, a small but safe haven for me and Luca. As I unpacked our lives, the reality of what had happened, of what I had escaped, began to sink in. I was alone, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense of freedom. Settling into the new apartment was a bittersweet experience. It was a safe haven for me and Luca, a place where the shadows of Maria's house couldn't reach us. I was meticulously arranging our belongings, trying to make the space feel like home, when my phone buzzed with a message that sent shockwaves through my world. It was from Sophia, her message laced with a sickening glee. You think you know Marco? Think again, Cora. Attached was a link, a portal to a truth I had never imagined. Trembling, I clicked the link. The screen lit up with images that shattered my reality. There was Marco, not buried in restaurant woes, but in the arms of another woman. Their intimacy was undeniable, the photos a stark contrast to the lies he'd fed me. The most recent ones were dated just yesterday. The business trip, the stress he'd mentioned, it was all a facade, a cruel play where I was the unwitting financier. I felt numb, the pain and betrayal intertwining into a cold resolve. For years, I had been the backbone, the silent benefactor of a man who lived a double life, all while his family treated me like dirt. A week of turbulent emotions was broken by incessant calls from Marco. His voice, once a comfort, was now a trigger for my contempt. Cora, please, you need to come back. Mom and Sophia crossed a line. And the restaurant, it's in shambles. I need you, Cora. The bills, they're piling up. The pleas that would have once pulled at my heartstrings, now evoked nothing but disdain. So you only need me to pay your bills and your family's bills? His voice cracked, desperation seeping through. We're still a family. You, me, Luca. Isn't that worth fighting for? A bitter laugh escaped me. A family? Is that what you call this charade? No, Marco. We're far from a family. And as for your restaurant, your debts? They're yours to deal with. Silence filled the line, heavy and uncomfortable. I could almost feel the weight of his predicament pressing down on him. But Cora, the money, Your problem, Marco. Your restaurant, your money. I'm done being your lifeline. I cut in, my voice unwavering, strong. However, we will discuss all this tomorrow. I will come to your mother's house. I made my decision. I'd return to that house, not as the broken woman they expected, but as the force they never saw coming. I'd face them, face Marco, Maria, and Sophia, armed with the truth and a plan that would turn their world upside down. Stepping into the house was like entering a lion's den. Marco's face lit up with a mix of hope and surprise, but Maria and Sophia's expressions were as cold as ice. They clearly weren't thrilled about my return. "Look who's back," Maria said, her tone dripping with disdain. "Missed us, have you?" I met her gaze, without flinching. "Not at all, Maria. I'm here for something important." I handed Marco the envelope, his face turning pale as he recognized it for what it was. "Divorce papers, Marco," I stated, the words tasting of freedom. "Our marriage ends here." Maria and Sophia's initial shock quickly morphed into smiles. "Finally getting rid of the dead weight, Marco?" Sophia jeered, her laughter grating on my nerves. But their joy was premature. "Don't get too excited," I interjected sharply. "You might want to sit down for this. It's been me, not Marco, keeping this household afloat." The room fell into stunned silence. Marco's eyes darted between me and his family, the truth finally out in the open. "It's true," he admitted, his voice barely audible. "The restaurant's been failing. Cora's been covering everything. She transferred $4,000 to me every month." Maria and Sophia turned on him, their faces twisted with anger and disbelief. "You lied to us? You let her pay our bills?" Maria's voice was shrill. "What should we do now, without her money?" "Then," Marco continued, his desperation clear, "I'm going to file for alimony. I earn less, so it's only fair." His mother and sister were delighted with this decision and even clapped their hands. Their claps echoed hollowly in the room, but I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. "You think that's going to work, Marco? You won't get a cent from me. Especially not after I found out about your affair." The color drained from his face. "How did you?" he stammered, his false bravado crumbling. I pointedly looked at Sophia. "Your sister was kind enough to send me all the proof I needed." The argument that erupted was fierce, the house filled with accusations and betrayals laid bare. Marco and Sophia were shouting at each other, waving their arms. Amid the chaos, I remained calm, my next move clear. "I'm taking back what's mine," I declared, my voice cutting through the noise. "Every appliance, every piece of furniture I paid for. You're left with what you've earned, which is nothing." And that's exactly what I did. I stripped the house of every trace of my financial support, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions. Maria's and Sophia's pleas for mercy, for forgiveness, were ignored. I blocked their numbers, severing the last ties to a life of deceit and disrespect. The fallout was swift. Marco's restaurant crumbled under the weight of debt, the house was lost, and Sophia's husband walked away from the wreckage of their family. They were left with nothing but each other and their mistakes in a cramped rented apartment. As for me, Luca and I flourished in our new life. Our days were filled with love, laughter, and the peace we'd fought so hard to find. The past was behind us, a distant memory overshadowed by the bright future we were building together. We were more than survivors, we were conquerors, and our story was just beginning.
My name's Carol, just a regular high school teacher with a love for old books and a quiet life. My world changed when I met David at the school fair. He was the main sponsor, you know, the kind of guy who makes things happen without making a fuss about it. He had that quiet confidence and a smile that could light up the gloomiest day. It started with a thank you note I sent him for his generous contribution. He replied with invitation for coffee, saying it was the least he could do for the hard work we teachers were putting in. I remember walking into that coffee shop, my heart racing a bit, thinking, "Carol, it's just coffee, not a moon landing." David was easy to talk to. We chatted about everything, from books to the best pizza in town. He had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. Before we knew it, coffee turned into dinner, and dinners turned into weekends together. A few months in, he wanted me to meet his mother, Mrs. Winters. "She's a bit old school, but she'll love you," he said. I was a bundle of nerves wanting to make a good impression. I picked out my nicest dress and spent more time on my hair than I'd like to admit. The moment we walked into Mrs. Winters' living room, I felt her eyes on me like a hawk. "So, you're the teacher David won't stop talking about," she said, her voice colder than I expected. I smiled, reached out for a handshake, but she just nodded, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. Dinner was an experience. Mrs. Winters had this way of talking where every compliment sounded like she was doing you a favor. "That's an interesting dress, dear. Vintage shop?" she said, her eyebrow raised just so. I felt my cheeks burn, but I managed a small "thank you. It's one of my favorites." David squeezed my hand under the table, a silent hang in there, but the digs kept coming. "A teacher, huh? Must be tough dealing with kids all day. Hope you don't bring that school discipline home," she chuckled, sipping her wine like it was the last one on earth. I tried, really tried, to keep the conversation light, but it was like dancing on thin ice. David changed the topic, talked about his work, the weather, anything to steer away from the silent judgments being passed across the table. Fast forward a few months, and there I was, in a white dress, saying "I do" to the man who made it all worth it. The wedding was a blur of laughter, tears, and dancing. Mrs. Winters was there, of course, dressed to the nines and handing out opinions like candy. "Lovely ceremony, though I'd have gone for real flowers. Not these. What are these, dear plastic?" she said, eyeing the decorations. We moved into David's home soon after. It was a beautiful place, cozy and welcoming, except for the chill I felt whenever Mrs. Winters was around. David assured me it would get better, that she just needed time to get used to me. Moving into David's home felt like stepping into a new world, one where every corner held a memory of Mrs. Winters' reign. It wasn't long before I got introduced to her morning ritual, the infamous inspection. It started like clockwork every morning. The minute the clock struck 10, the front door would creak open, and in she'd walk like the queen of her castle. Mrs. Winters had this air about her, you know, like she owned every inch of the place. Her first move was always to slip on those pristine white gloves, snapping them tight like she was about to perform surgery. "Morning, Carol dear," she'd say, her voice dripping with a sweetness that never reached her eyes. "Just here to help you keep the place up to David's standards." I'd force a smile, my hands clenching the dish towel a bit too tight. "Thanks, Mrs. Winters, but I've got it covered." She'd tut and shake her head, already walking towards the living room. "Nonsense, dear. You're new to this. It takes a keen eye to keep a house like this." And then it'd begin. She'd glide from room to room, that white handkerchief in her hand sweeping over every surface. It was like watching some twisted ballet, her movements precise, calculated. "You see here, dear," she'd say, holding up the handkerchief, now with a faint smudge of dust. "This is what I'm talking about. Can't have David living in a dustbin, can we?" I bit my tongue, the words "it's not a dustbin" sitting at the tip, but I swallowed them down. David had asked me to play nice, and I was trying, really trying. The worst was the kitchen. That's my territory, you know. I love cooking, always have. But she'd march in there like a general, inspecting the troops. "These pots aren't going to clean themselves, dear," she'd cluck, her fingers running over the rim of a saucepan I'd just washed. "It's clean, Mrs. Winters, I'd insist," my voice steady despite the storm inside. She'd hum, a sound that said, "I've heard better jokes." Well, we have different standards, I suppose. David's used to a certain way, you see. I'd nod, grinding my teeth so hard I was afraid I'd chip a tooth. It was the same every day. The living room, the bedrooms, even the bathrooms weren't spared. By the time she'd leave, I'd feel like a deflated balloon, all my energy sapped by her constant nitpicking. David would come home, all smiles and hugs, and I'd put on a brave face. "How was your day, love?" He'd ask, and I'd muster the brightest smile I could. "Oh, you know, the usual." Mrs. Winters stopped by to give some helpful tips. I'd say, the word helpful taking all my acting skills to sound even remotely sincere. He'd frown, that wrinkle appearing between his brows. "I'll talk to her, Carol. She means, well, she just has her way, you know." I knew. Oh, how I knew. But what I didn't know was how long I could play this game, smiling through the inspections, biting back the words that screamed inside me. Saturday mornings should have been about lazy breakfasts and staying in pajamas till noon. But in our house, they were about one thing, the dreaded family dinner. It wasn't just any dinner. It was the weekly performance, with Mrs. Winters as the stern judge and me. Well, I was the hopeful contestant, always falling short. I'd be up at the crack of dawn, the kitchen my battlefield. Pots and pans clanged, the oven roared, and spices danced in the air. It was my attempt, week after week, to impress the unimpressible, Mrs. Winters. David, bless his heart, would stumble in half awake. "Need any help, love?" he'd ask, rubbing sleep from his eyes. I'd shoo him away with a spoon covered in sauce. "Go get ready. Your mom will be here any minute, and you know how she is about punctuality." He'd chuckle, a sound that held a mix of love and a hint of worry. "Yeah, if you're on time. You're late. That's her motto." The clock hadn't even struck 6 when we'd hear the sharp rap on the door. Showtime. Mrs. Winters and Mr. Winters would step in, him with his warm smile, her with her eyes already scanning for faults. "Smells good in here, Carol. What's on the menu today?" Mr. Winters would always start off with a compliment, his genuine kindness a stark contrast to his wife. Before I could answer, Mrs. Winters would chime in, her voice slicing through the warmth. "I hope it's not that casserole from last time. Remember, David, how you had that stomach ache?" David would wince, a silent plea in his eyes, begging me not to retort. "Mom, Carol's been working hard all day. Let's just enjoy the meal, yeah?" Dinner would be a tense affair. Mr. Winters would heap praises, his delicious "dear," and "you've outdone yourself, Carol," battling against Mrs. Winters's relentless critique. "This chicken is dry, dear. You really must learn to keep an eye on the oven," she'd say, pushing her barely touched plate away. I'd grit my teeth, forcing a polite, "I'll remember that for next time, Mrs. Winters." David would try to lighten the mood, his jokes a desperate attempt to bridge the widening gap at the table, but it was like throwing pebbles into a chasm, hoping for a bridge. And then, just when I thought I'd survived the worst, dessert would come, and with it, a fresh wave of critiques. "Is this pie supposed to be this? Crunchy?" Mrs. Winters would ask, the word crunchy sounding more like catastrophics. I'd swallow the lump in my throat, my reply a mix of wariness and defiance. "It's a family recipe, Mrs. Winters. It's always a hit." She'd raise an eyebrow, her gaze saying clearer than words, "Not in this family, dear." As they'd leave, Mr. Winters would give me a warm, encouraging hug, whispering, "Don't mind her, Carol. We all love your cooking." But Mrs. Winters's parting words would always be a reminder of the invisible scoreboard where I was always trailing. "Try harder next time, dear. A happy husband is a well-fed husband." The door would close behind them, and I'd stand there, a mix of frustration and defeat simmering inside. David would wrap his arms around me, his silence a mix of apology and solidarity. "It's just one night a week, love. We'll get through this," he'd whisper, his words a lifebuoy in the stormy seas of Saturday dinners. The news of the pregnancy should have been a moment of pure joy, a new chapter for David and me. But amidst the excitement, a shadow lingered, the thought of Mrs. Winters's reaction. David was over the moon, grinning ear to ear. "We're going to be parents. Carol, can you believe it?" he'd say, wrapping me in a hug so tight it felt like nothing could go wrong. But the first time Mrs. Winters dropped by after hearing the news, the air was thick with tension. I braced myself for her words, hoping maybe, just maybe, this new life might soften her. "Well, I do hope you've read up on parenting, Carol. It's not all cooing and cuddling, you know," she started, her tone as sharp as ever. I bit back a sigh, a fake smile plastered on. "We're thrilled, Mrs. Winters. And yes, we're reading a lot, getting ready for the baby." She sniffed, peering at me like she was assessing if I was up to the task. Well, make sure you follow the right books. Some of these modern ideas are just nonsense." David squeezed my hand under the table, a silent message of support. But as the weeks turned into months, the pressure didn't ease. Mrs. Winters's visits became a litany of advice and thinly veiled criticism. "You're not eating enough greens, Carol. You want the baby to be healthy, don't you?" she'd say, eyeing my plate like it was a crime scene. Or, "Make sure you're not being too lazy. Exercise is important, but don't overdo it. You wouldn't want to harm the baby." It was a no-win situation. Do too little and I was careless. Do too much and I was reckless. The breaking point came one quiet afternoon. Mrs. Winters had just left. Her parting words, "Make sure the nursery is painted soon. You don't want the baby coming home to an unready house," ringing in my ears. David found me in the nursery, the paint samples scatter around, tears streaming down my face. "Carol, what's wrong? Talk to me, love," he said, his voice laced with worry. I let it all out. The frustration, the hurt, the exhaustion. "I can't do this anymore, David. It's like I'm walking on eggshells in my own home, your mother. It's just too much." David's face hardened, a rare sight. "I'll talk to her, Carol. This ends now. You and the baby are my priority." And he did. That evening, I heard hushed, tense voices from the living room. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. David was setting boundaries, fighting for our little family. The next day, Mrs. Winters's visits stopped. No more morning inspections, no more veiled insults. It was a relief, yet the silence felt heavy, charged with unsaid words and unresolved tensions. David was quieter too, his smiles not reaching his eyes. "She's my mom, Carol. It hurts, but you and the baby come first." "Always?" I held him close, the future uncertain but our resolve clear. We were a team, and we'd face whatever came next, together. 7 years flew by since Lily, our little bundle of joy, came into our world. David was a doting father, his love for Lily shining in his every action. My father-in-law, a gentle soul, adored his granddaughter, his face lighting up with every giggle and every new word Lily spoke. But there was a chill that never thawed, a coldness that lingered in the air whenever Mrs. Winters was around. She kept her distance from Lily, her words as sharp as ever. "Children should be seen and not heard," she'd say, dismissing Lily's cheerful chatter as nothing more than noise. Lily, with her big heart and innocent eyes, couldn't understand why her grandma wasn't like the ones in her storybooks. She'd try, in her own sweet way, to win over Mrs. Winters. "Look, Grandma, I drew this for you," she'd say, holding up a crayon masterpiece. Mrs. Winters would barely glance at it, her voice devoid of warmth. "That's nice, dear. Now go play, Grandma's busy." But Lily never lost her spirit. She found her passion early, cooking. The kitchen was her kingdom, her small hands skillfully mixing, stirring, and baking. Every weekend was a new adventure, her culinary creations a source of pride for us. "Look, Daddy, I made cookies," she'd exclaim, her face beaming as she presented her latest work. David would scoop her up, his laughter filling the room. "Chef Lily, you have outdone yourself! These are delicious!" Even my father-in-law couldn't resist Lily's kitchen magic. "My little chef," he'd say, his eyes twinkling as he took a bite, "you'll be running your own restaurant in no time." Their words were a balm to Lily's soul, a stark contrast to the cold indifference she received from Mrs. Winters. But children have a resilience, a way of focusing on the love they receive, not the affection withheld. One evening, as Lily set the table, her latest culinary creation taking center stage, she looked up at me, her eyes serious. "Mom, why doesn't Grandma like my cooking? Doesn't she like food?" I knelt beside her, my heart aching with the innocence of her question. "Sweetheart, Grandma, she's just different. But your cooking is wonderful, and Daddy and Grandpa and I, we love it. That's what matters, right?" Lily nodded, her smile returning, the shadow of Mrs. Winters' indifference brushed aside by the love of those who mattered most. The Christmas invite from Mrs. Winters was a surprise, but Lily's excitement at the chance to showcase her cooking made us accept. Together, we baked gingerbread and apple pie, her little hands working diligently, her eyes sparkling with pride. "Grandma and everyone are gonna love these, right, Mom?" she'd ask, her confidence as warm as the oven. "Absolutely, sweetheart," I'd reassure her, though a part of me dreaded the unpredictable tides of Mrs. Winters' approval. Arriving at the bustling house, we placed our dishes on the grand Christmas table, an array of colors and smells that promised a feast. Lily's face was a picture of joy and anticipation as we mingled, catching up with relatives we hadn't seen in ages. But as we settled at the table, ready to share the meal and the joy of the season, Lily's excitement turned to confusion, then distress. "Mom, where's our gingerbread and pie?" she whispered, her small voice trembling. I scanned the table, a sinking feeling in my stomach. Our dishes were missing. Mrs. Winters at the head of the table was holding court, her laughter ringing out clear and sharp. I approached her, my voice firm but polite. "Mrs. Winters, the dishes Lily and I brought, where are they?" Her laughter cut through the festive hum, cold and piercing. "Oh, those." "I tossed them out, dear. We can't risk serving just anything to our guests, can we?" The room fell silent, the air heavy with shock and disbelief. Lily's eyes filled with tears, her dream of sharing her love through her cooking dashed in an instant. "But I made them for everyone. I worked so hard," she managed to say, her voice a fragile whisper against the weight of her grandmother's harsh words. Mrs. Winters shrugged, her eyes void of any warmth. "Well, dear, not everything made with love is fit for the table. Better safe than sorry." That was the last straw. David, who had always been the bridge between his mother and our family, stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor loudly. "Mom, that's cruel. How could you?" he said, his voice steady, but loaded with an anger I had rarely seen in him. "Lily poured her heart into those dishes. She wanted to share something special, and you just threw it away like it was nothing." Mrs. Winters' smile faltered, her eyes widening in surprise. This was not the mild-mannered son she was used to. "David, I was just—" "No, Mom, you went too far. Disrespecting Carol is one thing, but hurting Lily, your own granddaughter, that's something I can't and won't forgive." He interrupted, his disappointment and anger clear and unwavering. The room was still, the festive air replaced by a tense silence. Mrs. Winters sat there, the impact of David's words hitting her. She had expected compliance, maybe a few whispered complaints, but not this. Not her usually gentle son standing up to her, defending his family with such resolve. The air was thick with tension as we left Mrs. Winters' house, the festive lights mocking us with their cheer. The sound of Lily's quiet sobs was louder than the Christmas carols that played in the background. David's hand was firm on my shoulder, a silent pillar of strength. As we reached the door, Mrs. Winters' voice broke through the heavy silence, her tone desperate, a stark contrast to the cold disdain she'd shown earlier. "Please don't go. I'm sorry," she stammered, her eyes wet with tears that seemed out of place on her stern face. David stopped, turning back to face his mother. The room held its breath. "Sorry. Now you're sorry." His voice was low, but it cut through the room, sharp and clear. "You humiliated your own granddaughter, Mom. You broke her heart. There's no sorry that can fix that." Mrs. Winters' sobs grew louder, her composure shattered, but it was too late. The damage was done, and the cracks too deep to mend. In the tense silence that followed, Mr. Winters stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. His voice, when he spoke, was calm, but it carried a weight that silenced the room. "I can't sit here and pretend this is okay, Martha." "Not this time." Without another word, he turned and walked away, his steps heavy with the burden of a decision long overdue. The room felt colder, the festive warmth snuffed out by a single act of unkindness. One by one, the guests stood up, their faces somber, their goodbyes muted and brief. The festive gathering was unraveling, the threads of family and friendship coming undone. As the last guest left, the door closing with a soft click, the magnitude of what had happened settled in the room. Mrs. Winters sat alone at the table, her sobs the only sound in the house that moments ago was filled with laughter and chatter. Outside, the cold air bit at our cheeks, a stark reminder of the warmth we'd left behind. David's arm was around Lily, her small body leaning into his for comfort. We walked in silence, the weight of the night pressing down on us. Back home, as we sat in the living room, the Christmas tree lights twinkling softly, a sense of peace settled over us. It was a fragile peace, one born from the chaos of the night, but it was ours. Lily, nestled between us, her tears dried, but the hurt still fresh in her eyes, looked up and whispered, "Are we okay, Mom, Dad?" David hugged her closer, a silent vow in his embrace. "We're more than okay, sweetheart. We're together, and that's all that matters." And in that moment, as we held each other, the trials of the night receded, leaving behind a simple truth. Family wasn't just about shared blood or shared names. It was about shared love, shared pain, and the shared resolve to stand together when the world seemed to crumble around us. The fallout from that chaotic Christmas dinner rippled through our family like a shockwave. The house felt different, quieter, the air still tinged with the remnants of that night's revelations. David was somber, his usual cheer dimmed by the events that had unfolded. "I'm sorry, Carol," he said one evening as we sat in the living room. "The only sound the ticking of the clock. I should have stood up for you and Lily sooner. I let it go on for too long." I reached for his hand, feeling the roughness of his palm against mine. "You did what you thought was best, David. We both did. But now, we know better. We move forward, together." He nodded, the lines on his face softening. But the true shock came the next day when Mr. Winters showed up at our doorstep, his eyes weary, a deep frown creasing his forehead. "Can I come in?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. David opened the door wider, concern etched on his face. "Of course, Dad. Is everything okay?" Mr. Winters took a seat, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since Christmas," he started, his voice trailing off. We waited, the tension thick in the air. Finally he looked up, his eyes meeting ours. "I can't believe Martha could be so cruel, so heartless to her own granddaughter. I never imagined she could go that far." David shifted in his seat, the weight of his father's words heavy on his shoulders. "Dad, Mr. Winters raised a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "No, David, I should have seen it, should have done something sooner. But I didn't, and now I'm thinking about a divorce." The word hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. Divorce wasn't a word thrown around lightly in our family, and coming from Mr. Winters, it was a bombshell. "Divorce!" David echoed, disbelief coloring his tone. Mr. Winters nodded, a resolute look on his face. "I can't be with someone who shows such cruelty, not just to Carol and Lily, but to her own family. I've turned a blind eye for too long, hoping things would change. But after what happened at Christmas, I can't ignore it anymore." We sat in silence, each lost in our thoughts. The decision was monumental, not just for Mr. Winters, but for all of us. It was a line in the sand, a declaration that enough was enough. "Whatever you decide, Dad, we're here for you," David said, his voice firm. "You've always been there for us, and that won't change." Mr. Winters smiled, a weary, sad smile. "Thank you, son. That means more than you know." In the days that followed, our family found a new rhythm, a new way of being. The shadows of the past lingered, but so did the promise of a fresh start, a chance to build something stronger and more resilient from the broken pieces. Lily's laughter returned, filling the house with a warmth that pushed back the darkness. And as we sat together, the three of us with Mr. Winters now a more frequent visitor, I realized that family wasn't about tolerating the intolerable. It was about standing up for each other, about choosing love and respect over blood and tradition. In the quiet moments, when the night wrapped the world in its embrace, I'd look at my little family and know that, despite the storms we'd weathered, we were stronger together. And no amount of cruelty or coldness could ever change that.
At first glance, my life with Mark seemed like a page ripped straight out of a glossy magazine. We were the perfect pair, the enviable couple. I, Monica, the diligent accountant, and he, the dashing new head of the department. Our story began at the office, where quick chats by the coffee machine blossomed into a whirlwind romance. "Can't believe my luck," Mark would often say, his arm wrapped around me. From colleagues to life partners. It's like we were meant to be. I'd smile, nod, and play along. Yeah, who would have thought? The dream team, both at work and home. But as the pages of our story turned, the dream began to show its cracks. After we moved into my personal home, Mark's true colors started to seep through the facade of the perfect husband. He wanted the traditional setup, him, the breadwinner, me, the housewife. "It's how it should be, Monica," he'd insist. "My mom did it, your mom did it. It's tradition." I wanted to argue, to say that times had changed, but I swallowed my words. The prospect of starting a family, of building our little world, was too tempting. So, I hung up my accountant's hat and embraced the role of a housewife, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. The first drops hit when I noticed the trail of socks and underwear Mark left around the house. Seriously, Mark? Am I married to a man or a centipede? I'd joke, trying to keep the mood light. He'd laugh it off, clueless or indifferent to the chaos he was creating. "Come on, Monica. It's just socks. No big deal." But it was a big deal. It was the dishes left by the TV, the pizza boxes on the armchair, the complete disregard for the sanctity of our home. I tried to talk to him, to make him see reason. "Mark, this isn't working. You need to clean up after yourself. This is our home, not a frat house." His reaction was always the same: anger, defensiveness, and a barrage of excuses. "I work all day, Monica. I don't have time for this. You're the housewife, remember? This is your job." Cooking, cleaning, trying to keep the peace, it was a never-ending cycle, a dance I performed to the tune of Mark's whims. But beneath the surface, resentment simmered, a silent scream against the life I was trapped in. Life with Mark's parents felt like a constant invasion. They had this way of just storming into our house, their presence as subtle as a sledgehammer. They never bothered to call ahead, they'd just show up, expecting to be fed and entertained. One afternoon, I was caught off guard by the sound of the doorbell. As I opened the door, there they were, Mark's parents, bags of shopping in hand, looking like they'd just claimed victory in some sort of retail battle. "Well, aren't you going to invite us in, Monica?" Mark's mom, Judy, asked with a tone that brooked no argument. I managed a weak smile, stepping aside. "Of course, come on in." They made a beeline for the kitchen, settling themselves at the table as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "We thought we'd stop by. You know, save you the trouble of cooking for just you and Mark," Judy declared, unloading her shopping bags with a clatter. Stan, Mark's dad, chimed in, already eyeing the fridge. "Yeah, and we figured you'd appreciate the company." "What's for lunch then, Monica?" I felt a pang of irritation. My home, my sanctuary, had turned into a pit stop for their convenience. "I was just about to make some sandwiches," I said, trying to hide my frustration. Sandwiches turned into a full-blown meal as I found myself chopping, stirring, and frying, trying to meet their unspoken expectations. Mark wasn't any help. He'd just slump on the couch, his eyes glued to the TV, completely oblivious to the circus in the kitchen. Later, after they'd left, I tried to talk to Mark about it. "Your parents can't just drop by like this, Mark. It's exhausting. I can't even relax in my own home." He barely looked up from his phone. "Oh, come on, Monica. They're just being friendly. It's not a big deal." I could feel my patience wearing thin. "It is a big deal, Mark. I'm not here to wait on you and your parents hand and foot. I need some space, some respect." But my words seemed to bounce right off him. "They're family, Monica. That's just how family is. Besides, they think you enjoy it." I'd look in the mirror, the reflection staring back at me a far cry from the woman who once walked the office halls in sharp suits and high heels. Now, it was all baggy sweaters and messy buns, my appearance a casualty of the endless demands of my home life. I missed those days, the click-clack of my heels, the sense of purpose each morning brought. Now, my days were a whirlwind of pots and pans, of cleaning up after uninvited guests who treated my home like a pit stop. As the days turned into months, life with Mark grew colder, the distance between us widening like a chasm. His behavior started changing, subtle shifts at first, then more pronounced. A new haircut that made him look years younger, suits that screamed of trying too hard, and a scent that wasn't his usual. It was like he was morphing into someone else, someone I didn't recognize. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just a phase, a midlife crisis maybe. But the nagging suspicion in my mind refused to be silenced. It gnawed at me, kept me awake at night. "Mark, is there something you're not telling me?" I finally asked one evening, the words spilling out before I could stop them. We were sitting at the dinner table, an ocean of silence between us. He looked up, startled, like he'd been caught off guard. "What do you mean, Monica?" "I'm not hiding anything." But his eyes, they darted away too quickly, his words a little too rushed. It's just, you've changed, Mark. The clothes, the perfume. It's like you're a different person. He let out a forced chuckle, but there was no warmth in it. Come on, Monica. A man can't spruce himself up? I'm just trying to keep things fresh, that's all. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But the doubts, once sown, refused to be uprooted. They grew, fed by his late nights at the office, the weekends he was suddenly too busy, the texts he'd quickly hide when I walked in. The truth, however brutal, couldn't be ignored any longer. So, when he stood up at one of those awkward dinners with his parents, his announcement hit me not like a surprise, but like a confirmation of what I'd already known deep down. I'm filing for divorce, Monica, he declared, his voice steady, devoid of any emotion. I've met someone else. Someone young, vibrant. She's everything you're not. The words cut through the room, leaving a trail of shock and disbelief. His parents looked from him to me, their expressions a mix of confusion and dismay. Mark, what are you saying? This is your wife, for heaven's sake, his mom exclaimed, her voice a mix of anger and disbelief. Yeah, son. You can't just throw away your marriage like this, his dad chimed in, his brow furrowed in concern. But Mark was relentless, his words a dagger twisting in my heart. It's decided. I want a family, a son. And Monica, well, she's not up to it. She's let herself go. It's time for a fresh start. His mistress, he painted her like a trophy, a prize he'd won, while painting me, his wife of 5 years, as a worn-out shoe, discarded and forgotten. The divorce papers he slid across the table were just a formality, his signature a cold, impersonal stroke of ink. But as I took them, something inside me shifted. The pain, the betrayal, it sparked a fire, a determination to not let this be the end of my story. Fine, Mark. I'm offering you a probation period, I said, my voice steady, my resolve firm. 3 months. If you succeed, I will give you a divorce without further ado. His smirk said it all. He thought he'd won, thought he'd broken me. But little did he know, he'd just awakened a sleeping tiger. Mark packed his things, his smugness almost tangible as he prepared to move in with his mistress. I watched him, my expression unreadable. Enjoy your probation period, Mark. Make sure she's worth it. His grin was all the confirmation I needed that he had no idea what was coming. The moment he left, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was time for a fresh start, and not just for me. The moment I suggested the probation period, I knew it was a gamble. My friend, Lisa, thought I'd completely lost it. We sat in my kitchen, the room still echoing with the remnants of Mark's departure. Monica, this is madness. Lisa exclaimed, her eyebrows knitted in concern. You're just giving him a free pass to walk all over you. I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the warmth spread through me. No, Lisa. This isn't surrender. It's strategy. Mark thinks he's playing me, but he's actually walking right into my trap. Lisa looked skeptical, her arms crossed. And what about his parents? They treat your place like a drive-through. You going to let that slide too? A smirk tugged at the corner of my lips. Oh, they're part of the plan too. Just wait and see. Sure enough, the very next day, as if on cue, Mark's parents barged in, their uninvited presence as predictable as ever. This time, though, I was ready. I stood in the doorway, blocking their path with a newfound resolve. Monica, dear, move aside. We're famished. Mark's mom, Judy, declared, trying to push past me. Not so fast, I said, standing my ground. You're both on a 3-month probation period, just like Mark. The confusion on their faces was almost comical. Probation period? What nonsense is this? Mark's dad, Ron, blustered, his face turning a shade of red I hadn't seen before. You heard me, I continued, my voice calm but firm. It's time for some ground rules. My house isn't a diner, and I'm not your personal chef. Respect that, or find somewhere else to eat. Judy's mouth opened and closed, like a fish out of water. But we're family, Monica. You can't just. I can, and I am, I interrupted, the power of taking control surging through me. Family or not, everyone needs to respect my space. You've had a free pass for too long. Ron looked like he was about to argue further, but Judy placed a hand on his arm, a silent signal. They exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, with a huff, Ron nodded. Fine, Monica. We'll respect your probation period, he grumbled, the words clearly leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. The silence in the house was deafening after Mark and his parents left. It was the first time in years I had the space to just breathe. I looked around, taking in the quiet, and something inside me clicked. This was my chance, my time to rediscover the Monica I'd buried under layers of compromise and sacrifice. I started with small steps. First, it was the clutter Mark had left behind. I gathered his things, boxing them up, each item a farewell to the life I'd known. This is for you, Monica, I whispered to myself. No looking back. Next, I tackled the mirror. The reflection staring back at me was a far cry from the vibrant woman I used to be. Time to change that, I said, my voice a mix of determination and excitement. I rummaged through my closet, pushing past the shapeless clothes I'd hidden behind. Deep down, I found the outfits I'd worn back in my accounting days, sharp, chic, a reminder of the confident woman I was. I dressed, the fabric feeling like armor, and for the first time in ages, I smiled at my reflection. The transformation didn't stop there. I hit the ground running, literally. Each morning, I laced up my sneakers and pounded the pavement, the rhythm of my steps a chant of empowerment. You're doing this, Monica. For you? I'd tell myself as the miles flew by. My diet changed too. No more quick fixes or catering to uninvited guests. I cooked for one, savoring each meal as a celebration of my newfound independence. The beauty salon became my sanctuary. I sat in the stylist's chair, the buzz of the scissors a melody of change. Just do it, I told the stylist. I'm ready for a new me. And so, my hair was cut, my style revamped. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't just see Monica, I saw strength, resilience, the beauty of a woman reborn. One evening, as I reveled in the quiet of my home, Lisa dropped by, unannounced, but always welcome. Her jaw dropped when she saw me. Monica, is that really you? She gasped, her eyes wide with amazement. I laughed, the sound rich and genuine. The one and only. What do you think? Lisa circled me, her expression one of pure awe. I think Mark won't know what hit him. You're stunning, Monica. Truly. The compliment warmed my heart, but I knew the transformation ran deeper than appearances. It's not for Mark, Lisa. It's for me. I'm rediscovering the Monica I lost, and you know what? She's pretty amazing. Lisa hugged me, her support as unwavering as ever. She always was, Monica. She always was. With my confidence restored and my spirit unbroken, I took the next step. I dusted off my resume, the document a testament to my skills and achievements. Interviews were lined up, each one an opportunity, a doorway to the future I was building for myself. 2 months after Mark's departure, my quiet routine was interrupted by a call that I had anticipated, yet it still held a tinge of surprise. Mark's name flashed on my phone screen, and I answered with a mix of curiosity and a well-concealed sense of triumph. Monica, I need your help. Mark's voice came through, tinged with a desperation I hadn't heard before. She's left me. Said she couldn't deal with my habits, the socks, the mess. I'm alone, Monica. I leaned against the kitchen counter, a sly smile playing on my lips. Really, Mark? That's unfortunate. But what exactly do you want from me now? His voice cracked slightly. I want to come back, Monica. I realize I made a mistake. Can we meet? Please? The words I had been waiting to say came out smoothly. All right, Mark. Let's have dinner this Saturday at our place. We'll talk then. I could hear the relief mixed with a note of triumph in his voice. Thank you, Monica. I'll be there. I knew you'd give us another chance. After the call, the wheels in my mind began to turn. This dinner would be more than just a meal, it would be my stage. I promptly called Mark's parents, extending the invitation for what I knew would be an unforgettable evening. Judy, Ron, I thought you should join us for dinner this Saturday. Mark will be there, I said, my voice steady and inviting. Judy's response was quick and enthusiastic. Oh, Monica, that's wonderful news. We've been so worried about you too. It's about time things went back to normal. Ron's voice rumbled through the phone. Yes, we're looking forward to it, Monica. It's good to have the family back together. Little did they know that normal was the furthest thing from what this dinner was going to be about. I spent the next few days planning not just the menu, but also how I would articulate the newfound clarity and strength I had garnered in their absence. Saturday arrived, bringing with it a moment I had anticipated yet dreaded. The doorbell's chime echoed through the house, a herald of the impending confrontation. I took a deep breath and opened the door. There stood Mark, suitcases in tow, a smirk painting his face. Behind him, Judy and Ron loomed, their expressions a mixture of hope and silent expectations. I knew you'd come to your senses, Mark said, his voice dripping with a misplaced confidence as his eyes roamed over the new me. Wow, Monica, you look incredible. See, I told you she'd come around, he said, turning to his parents with an air of triumph. Judy chimed in, her voice tinged with relief. Oh, Monica, we're so glad. It's about time things got back to how they were. I motioned for them to sit, my demeanor calm but firm. Please, let's settle down. We have much to discuss. As we gathered in the living room, an awkward tension hung in the air, thick and palpable. Mark, with a misplaced sense of victory, took the lead. Monica, I can't tell you how good it is to be back. I've missed us. And you've really changed. I met his gaze, my own unwavering. I didn't change for you. I changed for me. Mark, what you're seeing isn't a welcome back. It's a goodbye. The shock on his face was mirrored in his parents' expressions. Judy's hand flew to her mouth, and Ron's brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean, Monica? Judy managed to ask, her voice a quiver of disbelief. Mark left because he thought he'd found something better. But life outside wasn't what he expected, was it? I said, turning my attention back to Mark, who seemed to shrink under the weight of my words. It's not like that, Monica. I realized I made a mistake. That woman, she was nothing compared to you. She left because she couldn't handle, well, the things you always took care of. Mark stuttered, his bravado fading with each word. You mean your mess, your irresponsibility? I corrected him sharply. And now you think you can just waltz back in here, back into my life? Judy interjected, her voice laced with desperation. But Monica, he's realized his mistake. Can't you give him another chance? No, Judy. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill, not destroying a marriage. And Ron, you both need to understand that my home is not your convenience. I continued, addressing each of them, making sure my stance was clear. Ron, who had been silent, finally spoke, his voice a low rumble. But we're family, Monica. Family sticks together. That's just it, Ron. Family respects each other. Mark disrespected our marriage, and you both disrespected my home. That's not family, that's taking advantage. Mark, now fully deflated, made one last plea. Monica, please, I have nowhere else to go. I'll change, I swear. I stood up, my resolve as solid as ever. It's too late for promises, Mark. We're done. And as for having nowhere to go, that was your choice when you left. I've moved on. You gave me these divorce papers, I said, holding them up. And I signed them. We'd been officially divorced for 2 months. The room went silent, the shock palpable in the air. Mark's parents looked from him to me, disbelief written all over their faces. You're divorced?" Judy finally managed to say, her voice barely a whisper. I nodded. Yes, and now, I'd like Mark to collect his things and leave my house. And Judy, Ron, I wish you well, but from now on, my home is my own, I declared, the finality in my tone breaking no argument. Mark was grasping at straws now, desperation clear in his voice. Monica, please, I made a mistake. I'll change, I promise. I'll clean, I'll cook, I'll do anything. But my decision was firm. It's too late, Mark. It's over between us. And just so you know, I got a job as an accountant while you were away. I don't need you to take care of me. He was floundering, his pleas becoming more frantic. But Monica, you can't do this. I have nowhere to go. That's not my problem anymore, Mark. If you don't leave, I'll call the police, I said, my tone leaving no room for negotiation. At that point, Judy and Ron stood up, their faces a mix of disappointment and realization. They approached Mark, each taking one of his arms. Let's go, son. You've made your bed, now you have to lie in it, Ron said, his voice heavy with resignation. Before they left, Judy turned to me, her eyes softening. Monica, you're right. Our son was a fool to let a woman like you go. Life, after Mark and his parents' departure, settled into a rhythm that was all my own. I heard bits and pieces about Mark through the grapevine, friends who couldn't help but share the latest gossip. They said he was living with his parents again, struggling to find his footing in a world where he couldn't just rely on someone else to clean up his messes. Monica, you won't believe what I saw today, Lisa said one afternoon, her voice a mix of amusement and disbelief. Mark was at the grocery store, and let me tell you, he looked rough. Hair all over the place, clothes mismatched. It's like he's lost without you. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of vindication. Well, Lisa, that's what happens when you take everything for granted. Eventually, you have to face the consequences. The word was that Mark tried his hand at dating again, but no surprise, it didn't go too well. The same issues that drove me away were now driving away other potential partners. He's demanding, messy, just a lot to handle, a mutual friend shared. No one wants to put up with that. I nodded, a sense of closure enveloping me. Some lessons are learned the hard way, I said, not without a hint of satisfaction. As for me, life had taken a turn for the better, a stark contrast to the disheveled, pathetic figure Mark had become. I got a job as an accountant again, my mind sharp, my contributions valued. The office was a buzz of activity, a place where I thrived, surrounded by numbers and reports. And it wasn't just my career that had taken a turn for the better. My personal life was blossoming too. There was someone new, someone who was everything Mark wasn't. His name was Daniel, and he brought a sense of calm, a respect that I had longed for. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, my life was a testament to resilience, a story of rising from the ashes. Mark, now just a distant memory, was a reminder of what I had overcome. I was Monica, no longer the shadow of someone else's demands or expectations. At 27, my life was a tapestry of hard-earned successes and simple joys. I was Jenna, a name known in the corridors of a renowned company, not just for my skills, but for the warmth I carried. It was here, amidst the hustle of deadlines and the aroma of brewed ideas, that I met Alex. He wasn't just another suit, he was a burst of energy, a puzzle I couldn't resist solving. Our first project together was more than just work. It was a dance of minds, a clash and melding of thoughts. Jenna, your approach is something else. Makes me think outside every box I've ever known, Alex had remarked one late evening, his eyes reflecting the glow of the computer screen. I remember blushing, hiding it behind a chuckle. Well, Alex, keep up. I have plenty more where that came from, I teased back, the challenge in my voice unmistakable. Our romance wasn't a slow burn, it was a wildfire. It swept through our lives, turning routine coffee breaks into whispered plans, and mundane weekends into explorations of what two hearts beating in sync could discover together. Our wedding was a crescendo of this beautiful melody we'd created. Friends, family, and even skeptical coworkers watched as we promised to walk through life hand in hand. The first 2 years felt like a dream painted in the brightest colors. We were the couple that made single friends sigh and married ones nod in appreciation. We found joy in the little things, the shared popcorn during movie nights, the laughter over burnt toast on lazy Sundays, and the quiet understanding during walks under the canopy of stars. But beneath the surface of this seemingly perfect life was a silent storm brewing. The joy of our love was shadowed by an absence, a void where the laughter of a child should have been. Each month brought hope, and with it a tinge of despair. The negative tests were like whispers, reminding us of the one dream that remained just out of reach. I remember the nights, lying next to Alex, the moon casting a soft glow on his face. Do you ever think about it? About kids, I mean, I'd ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Alex, ever the optimist, would pull me close, his voice steady and sure. Of course, Jenna. It'll happen when it's meant to be. We've got each other, and that's more than enough for now. But as months turned into years, the absence grew into an unspoken presence between us. The walks felt longer, the movies less captivating, and the parties became a reminder of what we longed for but couldn't seem to grasp. The laughter of our friends' children echoed like a melody we couldn't quite reach. The air was thick with the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses. Alex and I were at one of our friends' annual bashes, a night when everyone seemed to forget their worries. I was mingling, half listening to stories I'd heard a dozen times, when a voice cut through the din, a voice from a past chapter of my life. Jenna, is that really you? The voice was unmistakable, laced with a boldness that belonged to only one person, Lisa, my high school friend. She hadn't changed a bit, still carrying herself with a presence that turned heads, her style as striking as her personality. I turned, my surprise morphing into a smile. Lisa. I can't believe it's you. It's been ages. Her laughter rang out, genuine and hearty. Too long, Jenna. Look at you, all sophisticated and successful. I always knew you'd make something of yourself. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, memories of our school days weaving through the chatter of the party. I noticed Alex watching from a distance, his eyes curious, but cautious. When Lisa waved him over, his approach was measured, his greeting polite but reserved. Alex, meet Lisa, an old friend from school. I introduced them, watching the interaction closely. Alex extended his hand, his smile polite. Nice to meet you, Lisa. Jenna's told me a lot about her school days. Lisa's reply was quick, a hint of mischief in her eyes. All good things, I hope. Jenna and I go way back. Had quite the adventures, didn't we? The conversation was light, filled with the banter of rekindled friendships and shared histories. But I caught the subtle glances, the unspoken words hanging in the air. Lisa was a force, her vivacity undeniable, but her reputation from our school days, the heartbreaker, the free spirit, lingered in the back of my mind. Over time, Lisa's visits became more frequent, our chats more intimate. We shared stories, laughed over old jokes, and confided in each other like the years apart had been mere days. It felt good, having a piece of my past back, a reminder of carefree days. But as Lisa's presence grew, so did the silence between Alex and me. The void of our unfulfilled dreams seemed to grow wider, the absence louder. Our home, once filled with the echoes of our laughter, now held whispered conversations and unspoken fears. It was during one of Lisa's visits that I finally voiced the worry that had been gnawing at me. The evening was winding down, the room bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. Lisa, I don't know what's wrong. Alex and we've been trying, but it's just not happening. The child we've dreamed of, it feels like a mirage now. Lisa's eyes met mine, a depth of understanding in her gaze. Jenna, these things can be complicated. have you seen a doctor? Sometimes it's not just a one-person issue. Her words, simple yet profound, struck a chord. It was a reality I had skirted around, a truth I had been reluctant to face. But in that moment, with Lisa's frankness, the path forward seemed a little clearer, albeit daunting. Months turned into a silent agony of waiting and hoping. Each failed attempt at starting a family chipped away at the joy that once filled our home. It's just not happening, Alex. We need to face this, face it together, I said one night, the desperation clear in my voice. Alex's reluctance was like a wall between us. Jenna, why are you so hung up on this? I'm telling you, it's not me. But fine, if it makes you happy, I'll do the tests. He finally conceded after countless conversations that seemed to go in circles. The day we went for the full examination felt like a step into the unknown. A part of me was scared of what we might find, but a bigger part just wanted answers. Whatever this brings, we'll deal with it, right? I asked Alex, seeking some reassurance. He just nodded, his usual confidence replaced by a quiet tension. The wait for the results was like living in limbo, each day stretching longer than the last. During these trying times, Lisa, my blast from the past, was a surprising source of comfort. Jenna, you're one tough cookie. Whatever comes out of this, you'll handle it. You always do, she'd say, her support unwavering. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. It was a chance encounter on the street that planted a seed of doubt in my mind. A former classmate, someone who knew the high school version of Lisa all too well, stopped me with a reminder of the past. Jenna, watch out for Lisa, okay? She was a real piece of work back in the day, breaking hearts left and right. You remember, right? She said, her tone half concerned, half curious. I laughed it off, the idea of Lisa, my rock during these turbulent times, being anything less than genuine seemed far-fetched. People change. Lisa's not like that anymore, I responded, but the conversation left a nagging feeling in the pit of my stomach. Later that day, as Alex and I sat in our usual silence, I decided to address the elephant in the room. Alex, can I ask you something? What do you think about Lisa? His reaction was immediate and defensive, a stark contrast to his usual nonchalance. Why does it matter? She's just your friend. I don't care about her one way or the other, he said, his tone a mix of irritation and something else I couldn't quite place. His words did little to ease my mind. Instead, they added to the growing list of questions and doubts that seemed to have no answers. As the days turned into weeks, the waiting game for the test results became a battleground of unspoken fears and doubts. Life at home had taken a sharp turn, the once comforting walls of our home now echoing with Alex's harsh words and relentless criticism. It wasn't just an off day or a bad mood, it was a drastic change that hung heavily in the air. Jenna, can you try a little harder? Look at you, it's always the same old jeans and t-shirt. When you're with me, I want to show you off, not make excuses for your plain Jane look, Alex remarked coldly one evening, his words cutting deeper than he probably intended. I stood there, a mix of hurt and disbelief in my heart. Alex, what's this about? Since when did appearances become more important than who we are to each other? I replied, my voice shaking slightly. But it didn't stop at my appearance. It was everything, my cooking, my cleaning, the very essence of my being. Jenna, this meal, it's bland. And the house, it looks like a tornado hit it. Is this really the best you can do? He'd say, his dissatisfaction clear. Each word stung, each comment a blow to the life we had built together. Confused and hurt, I turned to the one person who had become my confidant through it all, Lisa. Lisa, I don't know what's happening. It's like he's looking for reasons to be unhappy, to criticize me. I don't feel like I'm enough anymore. I shared, the vulnerability clear in my voice. Lisa's response was thoughtful, her words a mix of support and practicality. Jenna, he's being a total jerk. But maybe you guys just need a break from the routine. Why not plan a surprise, something to reignite the spark? how about a romantic trip? The idea was like a beacon of hope, a chance to mend the growing rift between us. Filled with a newfound determination, I approached Alex with the idea. Alex, I've been thinking. Maybe we need a change of scenery, some time away from all this stress. What do you say to 2 weeks in Hawaii, just the two of us? I suggested, the hopeful tremor in my voice betraying my anxiety over his response. To my surprise, his reaction was positive, a glimmer of the old Alex shining through. Jenna, that sounds actually great. You're right, we could use the time away. Let's do it. He agreed, his words a soothing balm to my frayed nerves. In that moment, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, this trip could be the bridge back to the love and understanding we once shared. The idea of a romantic getaway, of 2 weeks in paradise with the man I still loved, felt like a lifeline, a chance to turn the page on the recent bitterness and start a new chapter. The days leading up to our Hawaii trip were a whirlwind of anticipation and preparation. Alex, taking charge of the arrangements, insisted on handling everything. Jenna, you've been working too hard lately. Let me sort out the tickets and the hotel. You just focus on packing and getting ready for our escape, he said, a smile playing on his lips. I was touched by his thoughtfulness, a glimpse of the man I fell in love with. That's so sweet of you, Alex. Thank you, I could really use the break, I replied, my heart light with the promise of a fresh start. With Lisa's help, I dove into preparations. Shopping for the trip was like weaving dreams into reality. Jenna, this swimsuit is stunning on you. Alex won't be able to take his eyes off you. Lisa chuckled as I twirled in front of the mirror, the fabric hugging my curves just right. Thanks, Lisa. I really hope this trip brings us back together. It feels like we're finally turning a page, I said, the excitement bubbling within me like champagne. The day of departure arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. Alex seemed more upbeat than usual, a good sign, I thought. As we reached the airport, the buzz of travelers and the scent of adventure filled the air. But the unexpected sight of Lisa there turned the excitement into confusion. Lisa? What are you doing here? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. The smirk on Alex's face and the glint in Lisa's eyes were the first cracks in my carefully built hopes. Jenna, the thing is, Lisa's the one joining me to Hawaii. Not you, Alex said, his words slicing through the din of the airport like a knife. I stood there, disbelief and betrayal warring within me. But Alex, this trip was for us, our chance to reconnect, I stammered, the world tilting around me. His laughter was a sound I barely recognized, cold and distant. Reconnect? Jenna, you're living in a dream. I'm done playing house. Lisa and we're a thing now. Your little vacation plan just turned into our romantic getaway. Lisa's grip on Alex's arm tightened, her victory clear in her eyes. Oh, Jenna, you're such a dear friend. Funding our little escapade, how generous of you. Their words were daggers, their laughter a poison spreading through my veins. You're leaving me just like this? I managed to say, my voice a mere whisper. He shrugged, the casualness of his betrayal a final blow. The divorce papers waiting for you at home, Jenna. Just sign them. It's the least you can do for us. Left alone in the echoing vastness of the airport, the world around me felt unreal, like a scene from a movie where the protagonist's life unravels before her eyes. My heart was heavy, a mix of betrayal, shock, and an overwhelming sense of loss consuming me. It was then, amid the chaos of my crumbling world, that an unexpected voice reached out. Hey, are you okay? Do you need help with anything? The voice was gentle, concerned, cutting through the fog of my despair. I looked up, my eyes meeting those of a stranger. He was about my age, his expression kind, genuine. My husband, they just left me here. I stammered, the words feeling foreign as they left my lips. The man hesitated for a moment, then took a careful step closer. I'm Ethan. If you want, I can stay with you for a bit, or help you get home, whatever you need. he offered, his tone warm and sincere. His kindness, a stark contrast to the cold betrayal I had just experienced, was a small light in the darkness. "Thank you, Ethan. I'm Jenna. I don't even know where to begin." We found a quiet corner in a cafe, the noise of the airport fading into the background. Ethan listened as I poured out the story, the pain and confusion evident in my every word. "So, he planned this all along? Took your idea and turned it into this?" Ethan's voice was a mix of anger and disbelief. I nodded, the reality of the situation sinking in deeper with every spoken word. "I feel so foolish, Ethan. To think I was planning this trip to fix things, and all the while, he was planning this." Ethan's gaze was steady, supportive. "Jenna, you're not foolish. You're human, and you trusted someone you loved. That's not foolishness, that's courage. And his actions, that's cowardice." His words were a balm, soothing the raw edges of my wounded heart. We talked for what felt like hours, Ethan's presence a steady anchor in the storm that had become my life. Eventually, he glanced at his watch, a gentle reminder of the world moving on around us. "Jenna, I can drive you home if you want. You shouldn't be alone right now." The offer, so simple yet so profound, was a lifeline. "Thank you, Ethan. I'd appreciate that. I don't want to face that empty house just yet, but I know I need to." The drive was quiet, the hum of the engine a backdrop to my tumultuous thoughts. As we reached my house, the reality of what awaited me inside hit hard. Ethan seemed to sense my hesitation. "Jenna, if you need anything, here's my number. Don't think you're alone in this. Some people, they're just not worth your tears," he said, handing me a small piece of paper with his number scrawled on it. I took it, a small smile breaking through the tears. "Thank you, Ethan. For everything. Today, you were the friend I didn't know I needed." A year had rolled by, a year of healing, of rebuilding, of finding strength I never knew I had. But stepping back into my hometown, the ghosts of my past were waiting, lurking in the shadows of familiar streets and faces. It was in a quaint little cafe, where the past decided to rear its ugly head. Sitting there, lost in my thoughts, a voice that I hoped to never hear again cut through the calm. "Jenna, look what the cat dragged in." "Still the same, I see," Alex sneered, his eyes raking over me with a disdain I remembered all too well. I took a deep breath, bracing myself. "What do you want, Alex?" I asked, my voice steady, a testament to the year of battles fought and won. His smirk grew wider, more malicious. "Just wanted to flaunt my perfect life, Jenna. Lisa and we're married now. And guess what? She's given me a child, something you never could." His words stung, a deliberate jab at my deepest wounds. But the old Jenna, the one who would crumble, was no more. "Good for you, Alex. I hope you're happy," I replied, my words a shield against his cruelty. But he wasn't done. The arrogance, the sheer audacity, dripped from his next invitation. "Why don't you come over, Jenna? See the life you missed out on. Meet your replacement and our beautiful baby." It was a challenge, a cruel game in his twisted mind. But this time I was playing by a different set of rules. "Sure, Alex. I'll come by. It's time to face the past," I said, the resolve in my voice belying the storm inside. And so, I found myself at the doorstep of the home I once shared with Alex, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with a fierce determination. The door swung open, and there stood Lisa, her smirk a mirror of Alex's cruelty. "Jenna, you haven't changed a bit. Still the same old gray mouse," she taunted, her words dripping with scorn. But the Jenna standing at her doorstep was not alone. Beside me stood Ethan, the unexpected ally from the airport, now my partner, my strength. I introduced him with pride swelling in my chest. "Lisa, meet Ethan, my husband." The shock on their faces was a sight to behold. Alex's smugness faltered, Lisa's mockery dimmed. They tried, oh how they tried, to belittle us, to break us down with their venomous words. But together, Ethan and I stood strong, a united front against the storm of their malice. Jenna, I can't believe you'd stoop so low. Bringing him here, what a desperate move, Alex scoffed, his words a feeble attempt to regain control. Ethan's arm around my shoulder was all the response I needed. Desperate? No, Alex. We're here to close a chapter, to move on from the past that you cling to so pitifully. The air was tense as Ethan and I stood in the living room of the house I once called home. The walls, once witnesses to my heartache, were now the backdrop for the final act of a saga that had tormented me for too long. Alex's mocking tone sliced through the silence. Remember how lost you looked at the airport, Jenna? Like a little puppy abandoned by its owner. I still laugh thinking about it. The words were meant to wound, but as I looked into Ethan's supportive eyes, I felt an unwavering strength within me. Actually, Alex, that day turned out to be a blessing. Because of your cruelty, I met Ethan. He's been my rock ever since, I replied, a serene smile on my face. Alex's smirk wavered, confusion and shock intermingling in his gaze as he looked at Ethan. And what's so special about this guy? He sneered, trying to regain his footing. Ethan's presence was calm yet imposing. Well, Alex, aside from picking up the pieces of the life you shattered, I also recently became the director at your esteemed company. Funny how life works, isn't it? The revelation hit Alex like a physical blow, his arrogance melting away, leaving a pale, shaken man in its place. Before he could recover, Lisa, with her characteristic spite, decided to strike what she thought would be a crushing blow. At least I gave Alex something you couldn't, Jenna. A child. The ultimate gift. She spat, her eyes gleaming with malice. The room was charged, the air thick with tension and unspoken truths. I couldn't help but laugh, the absurdity of the situation and the secret I held turning my despair into amusement. Oh, Lisa, the irony of your statement is richer than you know, I said, reaching into my bag. I pulled out the envelope containing the test results, the paper that held the key to unlocking the sham that was their life. Alex, these tests we took, they revealed a truth you'd been too blind to see. You're incapable of fatherhood. This child Lisa's so proud of? It can't be yours. The words hung heavy in the room, a tangible testament to the crumbling facade of their lies. Alex's face was a mask of shock and betrayal, his eyes darting between the paper in his hand and Lisa's suddenly ashen face. Lisa's voice trembled, her confidence shattered. Alex, baby, this must be some mistake. Jenna's lying, she has to be. But there was no mistaking the truth, the undeniable reality inked on the paper. The arguments erupted, accusations and denials bouncing off the walls, the sound of their once united front cracking at the seams. Ethan's hand squeezed mine, a silent signal that it was time to leave the chaos behind. Let's go, Jenna. We have our own future to look forward to, one built on truth and love, not deceit. As we stepped out of the house, the door closing behind us felt like the final chapter of a painful saga coming to an end. The sun outside seemed brighter, the world filled with new possibilities, and the promise of the life growing inside me, a life created from love, not lies. Behind us, Alex and Lisa's world, a house of cards built on deception, was left to collapse. The courtroom would be their next battleground, but for Ethan and me, it was the start of something beautiful. A chapter of joy, of honest love, and the sweetest victory of all, a life well lived, a future bright with hope and the laughter of our soon-to-arrive child. My name's Sarah, and if you told me 5 years ago that I'd be in the middle of a tech startup whirlwind with Alex, of all people, I'd have laughed in your face. Alex and I met in college, in one of those highfalutin business courses where everyone thinks they're the next big thing. From the get-go, Alex and I were at each other's throats, competing for grades, internships, you name it. Think you can beat my presentation, Sarah? Alex would tease, leaning against the classroom door with that annoying smirk. Watch me, Alex. I'm not just going to beat it, I'm going to make you wish you never stepped up. I'd fire back, my words a mix of jest and determination. That was our thing, always pushing each other to be better, but never admitting it was actually helpful. It wasn't until a group project forced us to work together that things shifted. We found our rhythm, a balance between his bold ideas and my attention to detail. One night, while cramming for the project, we ended up sharing more than just notes. "You know, Sarah, I always thought you were just a pain in my ass. But you're actually kinda brilliant," Alex confessed, his guard down for once, as we sat amidst a sea of papers and empty coffee cups. "Kinda brilliant? Please, I'm the best thing that's happened to this project." "But yeah, you're not too shabby yourself, Alex," I said, the words feeling foreign but honest. That project was a turning point. Our bickering turned into brainstorming sessions, and before we knew it, we were more than just competitors or even friends. We were in love, talking about futures and dreams in a way neither of us had dared before. One evening, just as the sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the campus, Alex turned to me with an idea. "What if we don't just dream about making something of ourselves? What if we actually do it? Together?" "You mean, start a company? You and me?" I asked, the idea sounding crazy but thrilling. "Yeah, why not? We make a good team, Sarah. We could make this work," Alex said, his eyes alight with the kind of passion I'd come to admire. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound echoing in the emptying quad. "All right, Mr. Big Shot. But if we're doing this, we're doing it my way. No half-assing it." "Deal. But I'm the director," Alex quickly added, that familiar smirk returning. "Fine, Mr. Director. But remember, behind every great man is a woman rolling her eyes," I quipped, our laughter mingling with the promises of the future. Fast forward to graduation, and we were married. Not just to each other, but to our dream. We poured everything we had into our startup. Alex took the title of director, wearing it like a crown. Part of me found it endearing, his childlike excitement at being able to call himself a director. I knew the title meant the world to him, not for the power it held, but for the status he thought it brought. Our little company started to grow, our dreams slowly turning into reality. It was hard work, longer hours than either of us could have imagined, but we were doing it together. Our little startup was like a newborn, demanding all our time and attention. Alex and I were in it elbow deep, trying to juggle a million things at once. It was during this chaotic dance of meetings, coding sessions, and endless coffee runs that Emily walked into our lives. We hired her on the spot. It wasn't just her confidence, it was her energy. She was like a live wire, ready to electrify our startup and push it into the spotlight. And that's exactly what she did. Emily wasn't just good at her job, she was phenomenal. Her campaigns were creative, edgy, and exactly what we needed. But it wasn't just her work that stood out, it was her personality. She was funny, quick-witted, and fit right into the little family we were building at the company. It was easy with Emily. She had this way of making everyone feel at ease, a magnetic personality that drew you in. But there were moments when I caught a glimpse of something else, a sort of loneliness that she masked with her humor. One day, while we were brainstorming in the office, I decided to broach the subject. "Emily, how come someone as awesome as you is still single?" Not prying, just curious. Emily's smile faltered for a second before she shrugged, her usual brightness dimming. "Guess not everyone's as lucky as you, Sarah. Finding a guy like Alex? That's like striking gold." Her words were offhand, but the undercurrent of bitterness was unmistakable. It caught me off guard, stirring an unease I couldn't quite place. "Hey, there's plenty of gold out there. Just gotta know where to look." I tried to lighten the mood, but Emily just shook her head, the topic clearly closed for discussion. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, our little company began to take shape. Emily's campaigns were bringing in clients, and our product was gaining traction. But it wasn't just the business that was growing, our relationships were too. Emily had become an integral part of our lives, blurring the lines between work and friendship. It was a golden time, filled with hard work, harder laughs, and the feeling that we were on the brink of something great. Emily, with her talent and fire, had become more than just an employee. She was a friend, a confidant, and a crucial part of our dream. As our startup began gaining momentum, I noticed a shift in Alex's focus. It wasn't the company that kept him busy, but rather, the pursuit of the perfect business suit or the latest model car. His obsession with appearances had always been a quirk I tolerated, but now it seemed to take precedence over the hard graft our company required. "Alex, don't you think there's more to focus on right now than another suit?" I asked him one morning, finding him browsing through an online luxury store during work hours. "Come on, Sarah. You know how it is. Looking the part is half the battle in business. Life's too short to deny myself the finer things," he retorted without looking up, his attention fixed on the screen. I shook my head, exasperated. "Sure, but maybe the other half of the battle is actually running the business? You know, the one we're trying to build here?" He finally glanced up, offering a half-smile that was meant to disarm. "Relax, Sarah. Everything's under control. A director needs to look sharp. It's good for morale." His nonchalance irked me, but I decided to let it go. There were bigger battles to fight, especially with the unsettling rumors that had begun to circulate around the office. One late evening, I was burning the midnight oil in the office when I decided to take a break and grab some coffee. As I neared the break room, I caught snippets of conversation that made me freeze in my tracks. "Saw Alex and Emily cozying up in the marketing suite yesterday. Didn't look like any work meeting to me," one of our developers muttered, unaware of my presence. "Yeah, there's definitely something going on there. They've been spending a lot of time together after hours," another chimed in, their tone laced with gossip. I felt a lump form in my throat. My initial instinct was to brush it off as baseless office chatter, but the seed of doubt was planted. With a heavy heart and a mind swirling with questions, I retreated back to my office, the coffee forgotten. The next day, I decided to confront Alex. I needed to hear his side, to clear the air. Finding him in his office, leaning back in his chair with that all-too-familiar smirk, I didn't waste any time. "Alex, we need to talk. There's talk going around about you and Emily. What's going on?" My tone was more confrontational than I intended, my emotions getting the better of me. Alex's smirk faded, replaced by a look of confusion. "Talk? What talk?" "Sarah, you know me. Why would I do anything to jeopardize what we have here?" His words were meant to be reassuring, but there was a stiffness to his laughter that didn't sit right with me. "I want to believe you, Alex, but the rumors. They're not just going to go away. People are talking. People always talk, Sarah. It doesn't mean we have to listen. Emily's a crucial part of our team, nothing more. You think I'd risk our dream for a fling?" Alex's voice was firm, his eyes meeting mine in a challenge. I wanted to believe him, to brush off the rumors as just that, rumors. But the nagging doubt lingered, casting a shadow over our conversation. "All right, Alex. I just needed to hear it from you. Let's just focus on the work, okay?" "Always," he replied, but the ease that once defined our interaction seemed strained, tainted by suspicion. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my work, trying to ignore the whispers and the sideways glances. Emily, for her part, seemed oblivious to the rumors, her focus solely on her campaigns. But the atmosphere in the office had changed. What was once a place of camaraderie and innovation now felt like a minefield. I found myself observing Alex and Emily more closely, searching for any sign that the rumors might be true. Their interactions, once thoughtless and friendly, now seemed fraught with hidden meanings. The weeks leading up to the big contract signing were a blur of negotiations, revisions, and, frankly, a fair bit of groveling. The director on the other end was the type who'd make a saint swear. Every meeting, every call, it felt like wading through mud. But the payoff? It was going to be huge. This deal was our ticket to the big leagues, a chance to level up our startup in ways we'd only dreamed of. So, I buckled down, ignored the growing pile of laundry at home, and let takeout containers become my primary diet. Look, I know he's a pain, but if we land this, it's game changer, I told Alex during one of our late-night strategy sessions. Yeah, if he doesn't drive us insane first, Alex replied, his eyes glued to his laptop. Emily chimed in with her usual optimism. We've got this. Sarah's been crushing it. He's practically eating out of her hand now. I wasn't so sure about the eating out of her hand part, but we were close, damn close. And when the day finally came to ink the deal, the sense of anticipation in the office was electric. The annoying director, somehow less irksome with a pen in hand ready to sign, was there alongside us, a necessary evil in our path to victory. The moment the contract was signed, the atmosphere shifted from tense anticipation to outright celebration. Champagne bottles popped, and glasses clinked, the sound of success ringing loud in the lobby of our little startup that could. Alex, with that director by his side, stepped forward to address the crowd. I want to take a moment to recognize the incredible effort that went into making today possible. Alex started, his voice carrying over the buzz of conversations. Sarah, in particular, has been instrumental in getting us to this point. There was applause, a few cheers, and I allowed myself a small smile. Maybe all the stress was worth it after all. But then Alex's smile turned into something I couldn't read, a mix of smugness and something colder. Which is why it's even harder to announce that as of today, Sarah will no longer be with us. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that sucks the air right out of you. What are you talking about, Alex? I managed, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. As the director of this company, I've made the decision to let Sarah go. We're moving in a new direction, and it's a decision I've not made lightly, Alex continued, his eyes avoiding mine. The confusion was palpable, the shock of his words echoing off the walls. My heart hammered against my ribs, a mix of disbelief and rising fury taking hold. You can't be serious. After everything, you're firing me? From my own company? My voice was rising, the outrage clear. The room spun, faces blending into a mosaic of shock and sympathy. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This deal was meant to be our triumph, not my downfall. Everyone's eyes were on us, shock painted on every face. But Alex wasn't done. With a coldness I'd never seen in him, he added. And there's more. I'm filing for divorce, Sarah. This has been a long time coming. Before I could even process the words, Emily, the so-called friend and our advertising executive, stood up and wrapped her arms around Alex. Her laughter sliced through the silence, a sound so out of place it felt surreal. I've known Alex way before you did, sweetie. Emily gloated, her eyes locked on mine, filled with a triumph I couldn't comprehend. All this, your little dream company, was just part of our plan. You were just a stepping stone. The room spun. This was a nightmare. You planned this? My voice was barely a whisper, my mind struggling to piece together the betrayal. Alex shrugged, a smirk playing on his lips. Business is business, Sarah. We needed you to get the company off the ground, to seal the deal. And now, we're moving on. The betrayal stung, a physical pain in my chest. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The eyes of our employees, once filled with respect and camaraderie, now showed anger and disbelief. I can't believe you, was all I managed to say before turning to leave, my vision blurred by tears. But then, something unexpected happened. One by one, our team stood up. We're with you, Sarah. Mark, one of our developers, said firmly. We don't want any part of this betrayal. Yeah, count us out. Another joined in. We signed up to work with you, not them. Their words, their solidarity, gave me strength. I wasn't alone. As we all walked out together, Alex's voice echoed in the now empty lobby, calling out in a futile attempt to make them stay. In the end, it was just Alex and Emily left standing in the lobby of the company I built. Their victory was hollow, their future uncertain. We gathered in my small living room, a makeshift war room, surrounded by whiteboards and laptops. The air was thick with the smell of coffee and the buzz of ideas bouncing off the walls. Okay, team, we're at square one again, but that's not going to stop us. I started, my voice firm, trying to project confidence I was still mustering up. We've got the talent, the drive, and most importantly, we've got each other. Mark, ever the pragmatist, was the first to speak up. Right, we've got heart, but we also need a solid plan. What's our angle? What are we bringing to the table that's different this time? Lisa, who had always been the creative spark, jumped in. We need to innovate. Remember those ideas we thought were too out there? Now's the time to bring them to life. No holding back. The room nodded in agreement, the energy shifting from uncertainty to excitement. It was clear we were all in, ready to take risks we'd previously shied away from. And what about Alex and Emily? They're not going to take this lying down, I said, the thought of facing them again leaving a bitter taste. We focus on us, not them, Mark said firmly. We build something so good they won't be able to touch us. Let them play their games. We're here to win. The room erupted into a chorus of agreement, the resolve in each voice stronger than any doubt or fear. We need a name, Lisa suddenly said, a smile spreading across her face. Something that tells the world we're not just back, but better than ever. The suggestions started flying, some ridiculous, some brilliant, but all of them infused with the hope and camaraderie that had brought us together in my living room. After hours of debate, brainstorming, and more cups of coffee than I could count, we landed on a name that felt right. It was bold, it was fresh, and it perfectly captured the essence of our new beginning. Phoenix. With our mission clear and our spirits high, we ended the meeting with a sense of purpose. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time since the betrayal, I felt like we were on the right path. As everyone packed up their things, Mark lingered behind, a thoughtful look on his face. You know, Sarah, what Alex did, it's going to make our victory that much sweeter. We're going to show him what he lost. We're going to show everyone. His words were the reassurance I needed. Yes, we had been knocked down, but we were far from out. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about proving to ourselves that we could rise from the ashes, stronger and more united than ever. After filing for divorce, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, the kind you don't realize you're carrying until it's gone. My newfound freedom was intoxicating, a fresh start I hadn't known I desperately needed. Then, out of the blue, Alex called, his voice dripping with urgency and desperation. He wanted to meet, and despite every instinct telling me it was a bad idea, curiosity won over. We agreed to meet at a rundown diner on the outskirts of town, a place so nondescript it felt like a metaphor for our failed marriage. Alex was already there when I arrived, looking like a shadow of the man I once knew, with Emily, the cause of all this drama, clinging to his arm like a designer handbag. Sarah, thank you for coming, Alex began, trying to muster a semblance of dignity. We're in a bit of a bind. Emily, her eyes swollen from what I assumed were tears, chimed in with a sniffle. The deal, Sarah, the big deal we were all so happy about, it's gone. Cancelled. I couldn't help it, laughter bubbled up from within me, echoing off the dingy diner walls. Oh, let me guess, the contract that anyone could cancel within 14 days? That one? I managed between fits of laughter. Their faces were a mix of shock and embarrassment. How did you? Alex stammered, unable to finish. The director, the one you found so annoying? Turns out he has a thing against working with backstabbers, I said, my grin widening. The look of defeat on their faces was almost enough to make me feel sorry for them. Almost. Then, Alex, ever the opportunist, tried to salvage what little he could from the wreckage. Sarah, where did you get the funds for your new venture? Legally, I'm entitled to half, he said, desperation seeping through his feigned confidence. The audacity of the man was almost impressive. I laughed, harder this time, the sound bitter. Alex, dear, I've been making money long before you decided playing director suited you. I was a genius when you met me, and I'll be a genius long after you're just a footnote in my success story." Their faces were a picture of realization, the truth finally dawning on them that they had underestimated me at every turn. Standing up, ready to leave this chapter of my life behind, I looked them both in the eye. "Good luck, you too. Something tells me you're going to need it far more than I ever will." As I walked out of the diner, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the world in a warm, golden light. It felt symbolic, a sign that despite everything, I was on the right path. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my work, my new company, becoming a beacon of hope and ambition. The team and I worked day and night, our shared vision fueling us forward. Meetings with investors, late-night brainstorming sessions, and the relentless pursuit of innovation became my new normal. Each small victory was a testament to our resilience, a middle finger to those who had tried to bring us down. One evening, as we celebrated landing a major client, the team gathered around, beers in hand, the mood light and triumphant. Mark, ever the voice of reason, raised his glass. "To Sarah, the toughest boss I've ever had the pleasure of working for. You showed us what it means to rise from the ashes." The team cheered, their support and belief in me more valuable than any deal or contract. "Yeah, and to think, Alex and Emily thought they could take you down," Lisa added, laughter in her voice. I smiled, my heart full. Let them think what they want. We're here, we're succeeding, and that's the best revenge we could ever have. After everything that went down, I did the only thing I knew how. I built something new from the ground up. My new company wasn't just a rebound, it was a phoenix rising from the ashes, stronger and more vibrant than anything before. And the best part? My loyal crew was right there with me, every step of the way. We even managed to lock down a deal with the same partner company that bailed on Alex and Emily, proving that integrity and hard work do pay off. One day, as we were wrapping up a team meeting in our new, buzzing office space, Mark couldn't help but bring up the latest gossip that had been making rounds. "So, have you guys heard? Alex and Emily's venture tanked. They're drowning in debt." Lisa, always the one to find a silver lining, added with a smirk, "Guess they learned the hard way that you can't build something lasting on lies and betrayal." I leaned back in my chair, the corners of my mouth turning up. Well, it's a tough lesson, but it looks like karma doesn't take shortcuts. The room filled with nods and murmurs of agreement. It was true, we'd come out on the other side of adversity, not just surviving, but thriving. Alright, team, let's keep our eyes on the prize. We've got a lot to do, and I'm damn proud of what we've achieved. But this is just the beginning, I said, standing up, feeling the energy of the room lift even higher. As the team dispersed back to their desks, filled with a renewed sense of purpose, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey. Starting over wasn't just about proving Alex and Emily wrong, it was about proving to ourselves that we could overcome anything. Later, as I was getting ready to leave for the day, Mark caught up with me by the elevator. "You know, Sarah, seeing Alex and Emily's downfall doesn't give me as much satisfaction as seeing what we've built here. This is real success." I smiled, looking back at the office where our team was hard at work, laughter and light filling the space. "You're right, Mark. This is what success looks like. Not the failure of others, but the triumph of our own spirit." Stepping into the elevator, I hit the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, I felt a sense of accomplishment wash over me. My new company was more than just a business, it was a testament to resilience, to the power of starting over, no matter the odds. And as for Alex and Emily? Well, their fate was a stark reminder that shortcuts and deceit never lead to lasting success. The real victory was here, in the hard work, the late nights, and the unbreakable bond of a team that had weathered the storm together. Life's been kind of a wild ride, you know? Here I am, Anna, clocking in at 42, with what you might call the whole package. Got a nice house, thanks to my folks passing it down. It's one of those cozy places that's seen more memories than I can count. And then there's Mark, my other half. Met him back when I was just figuring life out, and he was tending bar at some dive, barely scraping by. My dad saw something in him, though, pulled some strings, and bam, Mark's running the top spot in town now. Funny how things turn out, huh? Our kids, Emily and Alex, they're our little trophies. Emily's got her head screwed on tight, always one step ahead, a real spitfire. Alex, he's the quiet storm, always buried in a book or some hobby that's got his brain ticking. I remember when Mark and I decided to shack up. It wasn't all roses and sunshine, but something about us just clicked. We were a team, tackling whatever crap life threw our way. When Emily came along, we were over the moon, and then Alex rounded us out. Felt like we hit the jackpot, you know? Mom, why'd you pick Dad, of all people? Emily would ask, her tone dripping with that teenage mix of curiosity and skepticism. I'd laugh, tossing a look Mark's way. Well, he made me laugh. And your granddad thought he could use a leg up. Seemed like a good bet. Mark would chime in, and I had the charm. Don't forget the charm, Anna. Yeah, charm, I'd echo, with a wink. Life with Mark was never dull. He had a way of turning the mundane into something worth remembering. Alex, ever the observer, would add, Dad's cool. He knows everyone and everything about the bar. That bar, it was more than just a job for Mark. It was his kingdom, and he ruled it with a kind of passion that was contagious. My dad helping him land that gig was the best kind of meddling. Gave us a stability we might not have had otherwise. We'd sit around the dinner table, the four of us, and it felt like we were in our little bubble. This is it, you know? I'd say, soaking in the moment. Our slice of the good life. And that was us. A bit rough around the edges, maybe, but solid. It was in those moments, amidst the banter and the everyday chaos, that I'd feel this surge of gratitude. For my family, our home, and the life we'd built out of love, laughs, and a whole lot of hard work. It wasn't perfect, but damn, it was ours. The thing about doubt is it creeps up on you like a shadow at dusk, silent and almost invisible until it's all you can see. That's how it started with Mark. His late nights at the bar weren't anything new, but they started stacking up, night after night, more than the usual. And then, one night, he didn't come home at all. Where's Dad? Alex asked one morning, his eyes scanning the empty seat at the breakfast table. Work stuff, baby. He had to stay late, I answered, stirring my coffee more than it needed, avoiding Emily's piercing gaze. Yeah, right. Emily snorted, her skepticism as clear as day. That's getting old, Mom. I couldn't shake her words, nor the nagging feeling in my gut. Mark had excuses, sure, but they were getting flimsier by the day. And then came the lipstick. A bright, bold color, clashing with everything in my makeup drawer. Holding it between my fingers felt like holding a piece of evidence, a clue in a mystery I didn't want to solve. This yours? I asked Emily, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced at it and rolled her eyes. Please, Mom. I wouldn't be caught dead in that shade. The conversation with Mark about it was anything but reassuring. Found this in your car, I said, tossing the lipstick onto the kitchen counter between us. Mark barely glanced at it before shrugging. Probably one of the staff's. You know how it is, things get left behind. His nonchalance stung, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. Things, or people? I shot back, the words out before I could stop them. Anna, come on. You know it's not like that, he replied, his tone a mix of frustration and fatigue. I wanted to believe him, to laugh it off as paranoia, but the seed of doubt had taken root. Emily, always one to call it like she sees it, didn't let it go. You're not actually buying that, are you? It's like textbook cheating behavior. Her blunt assessment hit hard. What do you suggest then, detective? I asked, half in jest, half desperate for any kind of guidance. Hire someone to follow him. Find out for real. she said, dead serious. The idea was ludicrous, something out of a TV drama, not our life. But the thought lodged itself in my mind, growing with every unanswered call, every vague explanation of Mark's whereabouts. Deciding to hire a private investigator felt like crossing a line, the first step down a path I wasn't sure I wanted to tread. But as I tossed and turned, I realized that not knowing was worse than any truth I might uncover. The uncertainty was a constant, gnawing presence, and I needed it gone. Morning brought a decision, a resolve hardened by a restless night. "I'm going to do it," I told Emily, her nod of approval both reassuring and terrifying. Mark, oblivious to the storm brewing, kissed me goodbye that morning with a casual, "See you tonight." I watched him go, the familiar routine now tinged with suspicion and fear. What I was about to do felt like betrayal, yet wasn't that what I feared he was doing to me? The irony wasn't lost on me, but neither was the determination to find the truth, no matter how it would change us. The week after deciding to hire a PI felt like the longest of my life. Every time Mark left for work, I wondered if today would be the day I'd get the call with news I didn't want to hear. But when Peter, the private investigator and an old family friend, finally rang, his news was like a breath of fresh air I didn't know I was holding in. "No signs of cheating, Anna. Just work and the usual errands," Peter reported over the phone, his voice a mix of professionalism and relief. I almost dropped the phone, a laugh bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. "Are you sure, Peter? Like, really sure?" Cross my heart. I followed him to the bar, a car service station, and even a grocery run. "If he's seeing someone, he's got them stashed in the cereal aisle," Peter joked, trying to lighten the mood. The relief was palpable, washing over me in waves. When I shared the news with Emily, her reaction was a mix of relief and skepticism. "So, we just trust him again?" Emily asked, eyebrows raised, her tone laced with doubt. "It looks that way, honey. Maybe we were just being paranoid," I replied, trying to convince myself as much as her. Emily shrugged, not entirely convinced, but willing to let it go for the moment. "If you say so, Mom. But I'm keeping my eyes open." Life started to get back to normal after that. Mark's late nights didn't stop, but the suspicion had been lifted, replaced by a tentative trust. That is until I found the receipt. It was just lying there on the dresser, a piece of paper that felt heavier than it looked. An expensive handbag from a high-end store, the kind of purchase we'd talk about if it were for me. I waited for days for Mark to mention it, to hand me a gift-wrapped box with a sheepish smile, but it never came. Finally, curiosity and a hint of concern got the better of me. "Mark, did you buy something from Luxe Couture recently?" I asked casually over dinner, trying to keep my tone light. Mark nearly choked on his drink, coughing before replying, Yeah. A gift for a client. You know, bar business. I paid with corporate money." The explanation felt off, forced. I nodded, trying to shove down the doubt creeping back in. The ease that had settled over our house after Peter's call was cracking, the receipt a reminder that trust, once questioned, isn't easily rebuilt. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't let it go, not without more proof. "I'm going to check our account," I whispered to myself, a plan forming. Just to be sure. But what I found only deepened the mystery. A large withdrawal, around the same time as the purchase of an expensive handbag. When I called the dealership about the supposed car repairs Mark mentioned, they had no record of him. I was trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing, and every new bit of information just made the picture more confusing. It was during one of these restless nights that my niece, Lily, dropped by unannounced. She was always a bit of a free spirit, bouncing from one thing to the next, and recently she had started working at the bar Mark managed. "Hey, Aunt Anna, just thought I'd swing by. You know, see how you're doing," she said, breezing into the kitchen where I was trying to drown my suspicions in a cup of tea. I couldn't help but notice the flashy new handbag she had slung over her shoulder. It was hard to miss, considering it looked exactly like the one from the receipt I found. That's a nice bag, Lily. Looks expensive, I commented, trying to sound casual. Lily glanced at her handbag and then at me, a flicker of something crossing her face, before she masked it with a smile. Oh, this old thing? Got a great deal on it. You know me, always on the lookout for a bargain. The way she said it, too quick, too rehearsed, set off alarm bells in my head. Funny, I started, leaning against the counter. It looks just like one from Luxe Couture. Saw a receipt for something similar. Was wondering who it was for. Her reaction was immediate and telling. She shifted uncomfortably, her gaze darting away. Luxe Couture? Really? No idea what you're talking about, Aunt Anna. Like I said, got this on sale. The conversation felt like a dance, both of us circling around the truth. I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. Right, a sale. Just curious, is all, I replied, my mind racing. The coincidence was too big to ignore, and my heart sank as I considered the implications. Later that evening, I shared my concerns with Emily, who had become my confidant through this whole mess. Lily came by today, with a new handbag. The same one Mark supposedly bought for a client, I explained, the words tasting bitter. Emily's brow furrowed, her detective mind ticking over. That's sketchy, Mom. You think Dad? I sighed, rubbing my temples. I don't know what to think anymore, Em. It's like every time I get a handle on things, something else comes out of left field. We need to keep digging. This doesn't add up, and you deserve the truth, Emily said, her voice firm with conviction. The next day, I found myself looking at Mark, trying to reconcile the man I married with the person who might be at the center of all these secrets. Mark, can we talk? There's something bothering me, I said, my voice steady, despite the turmoil inside. Sure, Anna. What's up? He replied, oblivious to the storm brewing. I took a deep breath, ready to dive into the heart of my fears. It's about us, Mark. About trust and honesty. I just want us to be open with each other, no secrets. Mark looked at me, a flicker of something in his eyes before he masked it with a reassuring smile. Anna, you know you can trust me. We've been through so much together. I wanted to believe him, to go back to the way things were before the doubts and the secrets. But the path to the truth was clear, and there was no turning back now. The discovery of the handbag and the lies about the car repairs were just the beginning, and I was determined to uncover whatever was hiding in the shadows of our life. The decision didn't come easy. Planting cameras felt like something out of a spy movie, not something a schoolteacher and mother of two should be doing. Yet, there I was, channeling my inner detective, driven by a mix of desperation and determination. Emily, ever my partner in this unwelcome adventure, helped me strategize. Mom, make sure you place them where you'll get a good view. And the car one, it has to be really hidden, Emily advised, her tone serious, a stark contrast to our usual lighthearted banter. Yeah, I know. It feels wrong, but I can't shake this feeling. I need to know, I replied, the weight of our plan settling heavy on my heart. The installation was easier than I thought. The staff at the bar knew me well, letting me in with sympathetic smiles, no questions asked. They probably thought I was surprising Mark. If only they knew. The car was trickier, but darkness and determination were on my side. As I tucked the tiny camera into its hiding spot, I whispered a silent apology to Mark, to us, for what our marriage had become. Then came the wait, a torturous blend of hope and fear. What if I was wrong? What if this tore our family apart for nothing? 3 days later, with Emily beside me for support, I played the recordings. The visuals were damning enough, but it was their laughter that cut the deepest. There they were, Mark and Lily, my niece, in what they thought was their private sanctuary, mocking the life we had built. Can you believe Anna? So clueless, arranging for you to work here was the best thing she's ever done for us. Lily's voice, sharp and cruel, filled the room. Mark's laughter joined hers, a sound that once brought me joy now twisted into a knife. Yeah, she's so busy playing the perfect wife and mother, She doesn't see what's right under her nose. The betrayal was one thing, but their disdain, their joy at my ignorance, was something else entirely. It shattered any lingering denial, leaving me with a clarity I wished I never had. I paused the recording, my heart racing, anger and hurt warring within me. Emily's hand found mine, her grip tight. "Mom, I'm so sorry. What are you going to do?" My mind raced. The man I loved, the father of my children, laughing at me with my own niece. The decision was suddenly clear. First, we're going to see a lawyer. Then, I'm confronting them. This ends now. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: I was done being the fool. It was time to rebuild, for me and for my kids. The truth was a harsh mistress, but in its light, I found a strength I never knew I had. The moment I decided to confront Lily, I knew it had to be precise and calculated. I couldn't let my emotions lead. This was about getting the truth, no matter how ugly. So, I waited for her at a spot I knew she'd pass on her way home from work. The look on her face when she saw me was all the confirmation I needed. "Lily," I started, my voice steady. "I know everything. There's no point in lying anymore." Her facade crumbled instantly, tears welling up in her eyes. "Aunt Anna, please, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Save it. I've seen the videos, Lily. You and Mark, laughing at me, thinking you got one over on me." "How long?" I demanded, my tone hard as steel. "It's been 2 years," she admitted, the words barely a whisper. "I wanted to end it, I swear, but Mark, he threatened to fire me if I did." My heart sank, but I kept my composure. "You're telling me he manipulated you? Threatened your job?" I asked, making sure to record every word on my phone, hidden in my pocket. "Yes, he said he'd ruin me if I tried to break it off." I felt trapped, Aunt Anna. "I didn't know what to do," Lily sobbed, her confession painting a picture of a twisted web of lies and manipulation. "And the private investigator? That was Mark's doing too?" I pressed on, needing to hear all of it. Lily nodded, wiping her tears. "Yes, he paid him off to lie to you, to make you think nothing was going on." "I'm so sorry, Aunt Anna." The recording was enough, more than enough. I turned off my phone and looked at Lily, seeing her not just as the woman who betrayed me, but as someone who'd been caught in Mark's manipulative grasp as well. Without another word, I turned and left her there, her sobs fading into the background. The walk home was a blur, my mind racing with the weight of Lily's confession and the evidence now in my possession. When I got home, I didn't hesitate. I confronted Mark with the evidence, his lies unraveling before his eyes. "It's over, Mark. I want you out. Now," I said, the finality in my voice broking no argument. He tried to explain, to apologize, but it was too late. I was done listening, done believing in the man I thought I knew. Emily and Alex stood by me, their support unwavering. "We're with you, Mom." "All the way," Emily said, her arm around my shoulder. Mark left that night, taking his lies and betrayal with him. As I watched him go, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that I was finally free from the deception, and sorrow for the love and trust one had lost. But looking at my children, I knew we'd be okay. We were stronger together, and no amount of betrayal could break the bond we shared. The road ahead would be tough, but with Emily and Alex by my side, I was ready to face it head-on. The moment I decided to get legal with Mark and Lily, I knew I needed someone tough, someone who wouldn't let them off easy. I found just the lawyer, a guy known for not pulling punches in divorce court. The day I walked into his office, I laid it all out, bare bones and raw. "I want them to pay every last cent they owe for what they've done," I told him, my voice firm, betraying none of the turmoil that had been my constant companion these past weeks. The lawyer, a grizzled veteran of family law wars, nodded, his eyes sharp. "We'll go after them hard. Your husband for support and your niece for damages. They won't know what hit 'em." Good. They think they can mess with my life and walk away? Not happening, I replied, the anger giving my voice an edge. The trial was a circus, each blaming the other like kids caught in a lie. Lily, tearful, tried to pin it all on Mark, saying she was led astray. Mark, ever the charmer, tried to twist the story, making Lily out to be the seducer. Sitting there, listening to them trying to outdo each other in deceit, I felt a cold satisfaction. They were unraveling, and the judge saw right through it. In the end, the judge laid down the verdict like a hammer. Both defendants will pay significant monetary compensation for their actions. Additionally, Mr. Mark will provide child support as mandated, he declared, his voice leaving no room for doubt. Lily's parents, red-faced and silent throughout the ordeal, paid up her part of the fine. Last I heard, they dragged her back to the countryside, hoping to hide their shame and her betrayal far from prying eyes. As for Mark, watching him realize he couldn't charm his way out of this one was a small, vindictive pleasure. The look he gave me, a mix of disbelief and resentment, was all the closure I needed. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt lighter than I had in months. It wasn't just about the money, though that helped. It was about accountability, about making sure they faced the consequences of their actions. Back home, I sat down with Emily and Alex, telling them everything. It's over. The judge made his decision. We can start to move on now, I said, my voice steady. The road ahead would still be tough, but with my kids by my side, and justice served, I felt ready to face it. Mark and Lily's betrayal would always be a part of our story, but it wouldn't define us. We were moving on, stronger and closer than ever. Life after the trial felt like waking up from a long, troubled sleep. The house, once filled with tension and secrets, now buzzed with a new kind of energy, one of hope and renewal. I found myself in the kitchen one morning, the sunlight casting a warm glow over the breakfast nook, with Emily and Alex chatting about their day ahead. Mom, you know what? I think we should paint the living room. Like, really brighten the place up, Emily suggested, her spoon pausing midair. I looked up, surprised by the suggestion, but then it hit me. She was right. You know, that's not a bad idea. What color are you thinking? Something bold. Maybe a sunny yellow or a bright blue. Make it feel new, she replied, her eyes lighting up with the thought. Alex chimed in. Can we get a new couch too? The old one's kinda, well, old. I laughed, the sound more liberating than I'd expected. I think we can manage that. It's time we made some changes around here, huh? Yeah, make it ours again, Emily said, a smile spreading across her face. As we delved into plans for redecorating, I realized this was more than just changing up a room. It was about reclaiming our space, our life, making it reflect who we were now, stronger, closer, and ready for whatever came next. Later that day, as I was sorting through some old boxes, I found a photo album filled with pictures of the kids when they were younger. Flipping through it, the memories came flooding back, not just of the good times, but of the recent struggles too. Hey, look at this, I called out, holding the album open to a page where Emily had chocolate smeared all over her face, and Alex was laughing beside her. They came over, and we all huddled around, laughing and reminiscing. We've been through a lot, haven't we? I mused, a hint of nostalgia in my voice. But we made it, Mom. We're still here, still a family, Alex said, leaning against me. And we always will be, no matter what, Emily added, her hand finding mine. The moment was simple, yet profound, a reminder of what we'd endured and overcome. It solidified my resolve to ensure our new beginning was built on love, laughter, and the unbreakable bond we shared. One evening, as we sat in our newly decorated living room, the vibrant walls embracing us in their warmth, I looked at my children and felt an overwhelming sense of pride and love. We did it, kids. We started over, and look at us now, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Yeah, we did, didn't we? Emily grinned, snuggling into the new couch. This is just the beginning, right, Mom? There's so much more to come, Alex said, his eyes bright with hope. I nodded, my heart full. Yes, this is just the beginning. Our beginning. And I have a feeling it's going to be amazing.